Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to the Digital Forge Broadcasting Network this lovely Wednesday night. We got a special treat for you here tonight. It's the NASCAR iRacing Series Daytona 500 kicking off a great season. We're going to go to the playing of the national anthem coming up. We will have a grid. Actually, I tell you what, we're going to skip the national anthem, and we're going to get right into it here tonight. We've got it in a little bit later than we would like, but tonight, I'm Dustin Caldwell, and I'm joined with Mitchell Reeves here tonight. We are going to go ahead and run down the lineup right here, right now. So as we take a look down on the grid, Monty Noise setting some heavy noise out there with the number 12 machine. We'll start on the pole here tonight with a 46.704. Doug George will be today outside in row number 2. We've got Rob Malone, Jonathan Wall, Jordan Haynes rounding out your top 5 inside of row number 3. Outside will be the number 23 of Michael Smith Jr. Jonathan Dickard, Brian Wildesen, Danny Hugel, Scott Ikes will round out the top 10. Mitchell, take it away from the 10 and back.
26, John O'Hart's going to be starting P11 with Alex Montanali for P12. Our very own Ryan Eckstein is going to be coming in at P13. Be watching out for him tonight. Car number 18 is going to be Jason Brennan, 14th. Daniel B. Johnson is going to be rounding out the top 15. Robert Roche is going to be starting 16th. Brendan Kirkman, P17. Attila Pop Jr., 18th. Jeremiah Vincent, which will be the number 1 car tonight, is going to be in the 19th spot, and Joe Cabin was going to round out the top 20.
And as we look on back through the field, in 21st, we got the number 20 of Matt Martin, Aaron Waddle, Mike Ellis, Scott Bolster, Sean Hughes, Tim Phillips, Shane Van Gisbergen, Brad Miller, Sean White, Mac Pratt through 30, and Mitchell will take you to the shotgun, all the way to the shotgun of the field.
Tony Bowling is going to be 31st. Carl Hayes, 32nd. David Akeney is going to be 33rd. Chris Crowell is going to be 34th. Ivan P. Pagrazno is going to be 35th. Christopher Munger is going to be 36th. And rounding out our wonderful field at the Daytona 500 is going to be Sam King in the number 37, starting P37.
Wow, how about that? You don't see that every day. A guy starting a shotgun of the field in his actual car number. And as we take a look down on the field, we've got the sounds coming by way. They are underway as the pace car has taken them around. And some of the drivers back there on pit road waiting to get off of pit road and onto the track for their pace lap here. And again, it's a full 500-mile race tonight. It's going to be 200 laps here at the luscious Daytona International Speedway. And Mitchell, I'm glad you can join us here tonight. We're going to take it out to our center field cam here as we get ready to go racing. Take a look at all these wonderful cars down there on the road, on the track, and some of the stragglers out there as well. And you've raced in this before, Mitchell. You know what it's all about. And when we get the green flag, what does it mean as a driver at this point in time? You're at the beginning of the series, the NASCAR iRacing Series, kicking it off with the Daytona 500. What does it mean to you in this pace lap if you were out there right now?
Well, this is the Super Bowl of it, Dustin. I mean, this is what everybody wants to win. This is the biggest race of the series. And what better way to start off the NIS Open Series with a win? A lot of good guys in here tonight. It's going to be a great race. We come out here to turn 4, but I really think it's going to be an interesting to see how this race plays out. It's going to be a lot of great racers and see what can happen.
And as we take a look down on the field, the pace car, Mustang iRacing pace car, will dive into the pits. There it goes. Noise up front. We're ready to go green flag racing for the Daytona 500. And we've got some trouble in the first couple turns. Oh my.
This is the big one, Dustin. This is definitely the big one.
And as we take a look back, it looks like a whole hoopla of cars. Normally you'd expect to see the big one later on the race, but we're getting it right on the first lap into the turns. You got to count that one to nerves, right?
Oh, yeah. I think it looked like there might have just been a slight bumper. That was the thing the drivers talked about this whole week, was the bumper could be an issue. And it looks like the 24 might have just hit the 30 a little bit wrong there, Dustin, and it just turned into calamity. Just nowhere for anybody to go there.
And being so much with all those cars involved, I mean, we can go back and take a look and just really see where this one developed. And we said, again, the 24 involved in this one. And it's Jonathan Dickert. He's currently down on pit road. We're going to dial back the replay camera for you and take a look.
Yeah, that's just really got to be a lot of heartbreakers for those guys out there. Everybody's been working so hard on these setups, and to not even get out of turn two just has got to be a heartbreaker. As
we take a look here, we're just going to have a still shot of what it looks like. This is pretty much well into the incident, and they are all over this track. How about this? A big pileup, a big junkyard on the infield. You see everybody trying to get around one another down there, and Dickert, of course, down there will need a tow back to pit road.
Yeah, and you look back there, it looks like we might have seen our Ryan Eckstein get in that too. Might have got some damage, but really a lot of guys just had some issues. Looks like they just checking up there, and it just kind of bottlenecked, and really, like I said, just nowhere for people to go. But man, these guys that really stayed on pit road for a while to start in the back, it makes them look like geniuses now, because they are really narrowed down the field now, and this really takes a lot of good guys out of this race.
They were able to avoid a lot of the contact, and that's one of the tough things about these big, large numbered fields that you have out there, is differences in where you think that first pivotal caution is going to come out to try to avoid it. And in your experience, I'm going to play a lot on this here. You're the driver behind the wheel, the wheelman here up in the booth. But where would you anticipate, like, if you had to say, when you're thinking about qualifying and coming into something like that as big as the Daytona 500, do you want to do your best in qualifying? You want to hold a little battle back? What would be your thoughts? I mean, we got to see pretty much midpoint of the field here tonight is where that first caution flag comes out. What is your thoughts on it?
It's really just a catch-22 situation. You can start in the front, but I've always thought, if you're not starting in top five, or even if you're not starting on the front row, you're really going to be in some danger territory. And on top of that, if you start in the back, when you have to avoid the big one, like most of these guys just had to do, it might be very hard to slow down. The only guys that I really saw actually get through that was a perfect guy was the 5 car. He actually came to a complete stop. That was Scott Bolster. Had to come to a complete stop just to get through that. So really, it's all about how aggressive you want to be. And unfortunately, the aggression of the looks like the 24 there just got the best of them, and it might not just even been an aggression. It might have just been the bumper hook, and it started just catastrophe. But when it comes to starting somewhere, it doesn't. It could be bottom, it could be in the back or the front. It just kind of depends on the luck of the draw there.
And, you've been on both sides of the coins. I mean, we had some talk out there in the chat as well. A lot of people put a lot of time and effort preparing for something like this. What does it mean? And what can we express from the feelings of these guys that were involved in that initial caution to have that much effort taken away from them that quick?
Oh, it's definitely got to be a heartbreak, Dustin. It's just, it's one of those things where this is the race where people prepare the most. You have over 3 months to prepare for this race, get the best setup under you can, and then you start into a series where you're working every week. The best mindset of these people that now have race cars is just to stay in it for points. I mean, right now we're looking at maybe less than 20 cars now out of 37 that might have no damage, and that really narrows down the field. I mean, you can look on pit road right now. There's at least 10 or 12 cars just sitting there trying to get their damage fixed. So now it's about how much can you get and just how many points you can get to start this season off. That's really the way you're going to have to look at it at Daytona with a wrecked race car.
As we take a look in turn number 2 as they work their way into the backstretch, the lights off that pace car in a hurry-up momentum from everybody on pit road. We see some stragglers coming through the first set of turns trying to get back up with the pack. And we'll show you a quick top 5 as where they said Monty Noyes, Doug George, Rob Maloney, Tony Boeing, and Sean Van Gisbergen. And not exactly getting help with these names, almost like we're calling F1 or one of the European series with these large last names. But nevertheless, they are about ready to go back green here on lap number 5. And as you mentioned before, getting close to about 20 cars will be taken back to this restart. just really, really tough to see, especially with 37 starting it out. So we'll have to see how this will play out up front. Again, Monty Noise will be taking us back to the green. Doug George will be that car to the outside as they make their way into the tri-oval. Coming off of turn 4, they'll be ready to go back green as we now see the pace car dive down pit road. We are ready for some green flag racing. Green flag flies. We are back to the race on lap number 5. And as we take a look at the center field cam, the number 12 of Monty Noise leading them down the front stretch into that first turn. And if we get some green flags under us, anticipating that we're going to see this green flag run for just a little bit, what do these drivers got to do, Mitchell, here to set up in the draft to propel themselves to stay up front and to hold off these hungry drivers back behind them?
The best thing they can do right here, Dustin, is just try to get single file. Now that the race has really already made a huge turn, it's really about just getting to the end. These guys that just got through this caution, they're basically guaranteed a top 20 with getting to the end. Another developing story I'm starting to see, there's 3 teammates out here. Actually, it's going to be the 12 of Monty Noise, Rob Malone, and Sean Smith. The 13, the 12, and the 28 are all teammates, so that might work in their favor, especially all 3 of them getting through that wreck.
And we're talking about Sean Van Gissenbergen. Excuse me. I'm trying to get that name the best I can here tonight for you out there, folks. But he's the Australian V8 Supercar champion, so a little bit of crossover there for the number 5 machine. And great to see some drivers splitting across different series and to be able to remain competitive, of course. And I said 5, it's actually the number 9 machine. Gissenbergen currently running in the top 5 there. And if you're Monty Noise, you got a teammate behind him, but if you're Doug George on that high side, what are your thoughts on how to edge out these 2 teammates below you?
Well, I think right now he's just trying to fill out the draft, see what he can get away with. Right now he's got 2 guys behind him, and the dominant line has definitely always been the bottom at Daytona. But if we go into turn 1 here, it's very obvious that the high line is there if you have the help. So that might be a developing story as we get to the later laps of this race. If you can make a move on the outside, can you pull it off as you're starting to see them drift back? But with 3 cars, it's it's got to be a little bit motivating for those guys up there that they can stay with them and maybe make that high side work.
And you got Tony Bowling and Jonathan Wall up there at the high side. Bowling in that number 17, Wall in the number 11 up to the high side. And this is, I guess this is where you would think you would start to find, not being teammates, but just find draft partners to stay competitive. I mean, you could try to carry as much side draft off these guys as possible as we're seeing them here come through the front stretch into the lap number 9 now as they work their way out of the front stretch. And how about that car down there, Gissenbergen's car? He's definitely not shy about a nice little paint scheme on that 9 machine.
No, he definitely is wanting to be stood out, and right now he's really standing out being in the P5 position right now. With him coming with his V8 Supercar experience, he might be able to bring another magnitude and bring some magnitude to this race and some different varieties. It'd be interesting to see what the guy that can turn right and left very well can do turning left 400 times for 200 laps. It's going to be very interesting to see if he can pull it off. And with him already being a P5, getting through the big one, it's looking pretty strong for him right now.
And this little draft pattern that we got here in the front stretch looking really solid, but how about the teammates up front between Noise and Maloney? These guys are looking really solid, kind of starting to separate themselves from that high line as we now see Doug George side by side with Gissenbergen.
Yeah, they're really starting to fall back a little bit. It's looks like there's about 5 cars on the bottom compared to the 3. There's 2 guys lingering there in the back, probably just waiting to see how it works. But I think I really am. It's really good to see though that the outside is trying to make a run. Doug George is really trying to make it work. He keeps falling back, but it's definitely got to show him that he can make it work if he's got the cars behind him. It's going to be interesting. Another thing too now, Dustin, is with all these lap cars that are damaged, they're going to be coming up on lap cars a lot. So there's going to be a lot of weird and different three-wide situations tonight when you're trying to pass some of these slower cars.
As we've seen down there on pit road, a couple of cars making their way off to rejoin the track. Plenty of distance here tonight. And if you're a driver that was involved in that first caution, you got to realize you got plenty of distance. Though you may go a couple laps down early, I believe, don't you feel at this point there's still a window of opportunity to get back on that lead lap and possibly even be competitive?
Yeah, I think there is. You're going to have some luck tonight. If you got in that first incident, you're really just going to have to try to work together with the other guys that have damage. Try to make it work. As you look back a little bit here in the field, you see Jason, Brennan, Mike Ellis. Some of these guys are running side by side. Probably not the best idea right now. They need to work together in a single file line to see if they can maybe catch us back and see what kind of speed they actually have.
And once again, through the front stretch, more lap traffic to come off of pit road on the apron, as a lot of the drivers that involved in it now looking to rejoin the track. And you see guys down there spending about, quite a bit of time down on pit road. You come back out onto the track, you got to get competitive and just run it. You look at this, you think that they got to find a draft partner right away. Obviously, they're not going to be as competitive as this pack here, but you almost would want to think that they could try to bunch up themselves. And as we see now here in the front stretch, they're heading up on lap traffic.
Yeah, this is going to be something we're going to see a lot tonight now. There's a lot of cars that are damaged, a lot of cars that are running almost 50, 60 miles an hour slower. The closing rate on these cars is going to be kind of ridiculous, and it could make it very interesting for these leaders, and it's going to be kind of the leader and the lap car working together to make sure that they have the right communication on what line that slow car needs to take. Because if it takes one move and one bad spot to be in to wreck this whole entire front field, which is basically only about 10 to 12 cars now.
And as we saw on the front stretch, the number 21 car that was up to the high side of George when he went by, that's Alex Montranelli and that 21 machine. And he's not too far back, about 8 laps down at this point. Chris Crowell, in fact, is your lucky dog back in 18th position. So looks like we got about 16, 17 cars on the lead lap currently as we head into lap number 14. And now looks like the High Line is starting to get a little bit of momentum back here through 1 and 2.
Yeah, and it looks like, as just we said that, it looks like everybody's starting to kind of dwindle out. I think everybody's realizing, okay, how high side can work. Let's get to the first pit stop. We see the number 9, we were talking about him earlier, of Sean Van Gissenbergen, has already fallen back pretty far, and kind of in that spot where he might lose the draft if he doesn't get going here, as we see the 34 and 17 really fall back on the outside.
And as we take you down closer to the field to watch him come firing through the front stretch, and whoa! Something happened there with George on the high side being left out to dry. Nobody there to help him out. And, of course, as we see him coming past the tri-oval, what's your thoughts here for George heading into turn 1? Does he go down into the lower groove? Looks like that's what he's going to do, trying to just fall into line there and get back. But when you lose that outside and that help, boy, does that really kill you as far as progress.
It definitely is going to hurt them. I think they realize how far they can go. Another thing to play into factor here at Daytona, the oil temperature can get very hot. At 280 degrees, the oil will start to flash on the driver's dashboard. If you run hot enough, it'll blow the motor, and definitely this early, you do not want to have the motor hurt. And however long that oil temp is flashing over 280, the motor starts to lose horsepower, so you definitely don't want to have high temperatures this early in the race.
And, of course, we see Doug George down there on the field back behind Tony Bowling. Heading into turn number 1, the driver started second here tonight on the grid, right in front of the V8 Supercar champion, the Australian V8 Supercar champion, Sean Van Gissenberg. And Gissenberg here tonight started, how about this, 27th, folks. He's been running up a little bit in the top 5, currently running 9th here tonight. And we finally, here on lap 16, start to see some single file action.
Yeah, and I think this might be the telltale sign of the race here, Dustin. I think everybody knows now they have some good positions. This is, the farthest they can fall back really and truly on the lead lap is about 16th. And right now it's just trying to get through these pit stops and trying to stay together. When these pit stops happen, if these guys lose the lead pack that are in it now, it could be very, very bad for them, and it'll be very hard to catch back up by yourself. So I think everybody's just trying to get to the first pit stop, see what the actual setup's going to do on a long run, because now that we're down to this low of cars now, it's very, very likely we're going to have a lot of green flag pit stops and a lot of long runs.
And as we talk about green flag pit stops, 17 laps to be in it at the line. What would you say the good pit stop window would be? Are we looking about 40 laps here, or in the typical pit strategy, or some of the drivers going to come down a little bit early and try to do a little short pit strategy?
Well, it really all depends on their setup. I really do think that these guys are going to have good communication, all try to work together here to try to get to the end. One thing that's really in favor with Monty Knows, Sean White, and his other teammate, which is going to be Rob Malone, is those guys are probably on the same team speak, so they can work very well together. But a 40-lap run is going to be about the fuel run here. Another thing I've heard a lot from the drivers this week is that the setup is getting very tight. So if they start seeing a lot of the tightness come in, or possibly even breaking loose, they might bring it down a little bit early. Make sure that the car stays good, and make sure you can get back out there with a clean race car.
And, of course, behind Gissenbergen is Brad Miller, the number 10 in number 10. So we got about a 10-car pack right now, and taking a look up front, heading into turns 1 and 2, they got 3 lap cars ahead. If you are Monty Noise heading into this lap traffic, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that's going to probably be his biggest worry tonight. Now that he's got a teammate behind him, he knows he's not going to have much pressure from behind for at least a while. But these slow cars are just, looks like they're all over the track here, and they're very, very slow. There's a lot of damaged cars out here that are running just super slow, and, you've got to be worried as a leader of Monty Knows that one of these guys might not see him coming up and turn down. If that happens, that could kill your whole entire Daytona 500 right there.
And as we see the slower cars up on the high side, slower by draft, folks. And they're trying to avoid the lead lap traffic, and everybody down there hugging that line. One thing we didn't have a chance to take a look at early in the race, we're going to come to it right now, as they come through the front stretch heading into lap number 20 on 10% of the race soon to be complete. Let's take a look at the actual race information. We kind of flew into this broadcast here tonight. Of course, we know we're at the Daytona International Speedway. A lot of lap traffic up to the high side. We'll get to that in a minute. 73 degrees in the air, 47% humidity, clear skies in Mitchell. We're taking a look at a 100-degree track temperature down there. Definitely showing why these drivers are all favoring that bottom line.
Yeah, and another thing, too, with running that bottom line is something you have to definitely keep in the back of your mind, is that apron. If you mess up and end up hitting that apron, it could definitely take you on a ride. But with it being 100-degree track temperature, there's not going to be a lot of grip. It's going to be very greasy out there. It's going to have a lot of issues, probably on the long runs with these setups. And really, this is when the 3 months of working on your setup is really going to come into play. If you built a long setup, this is going to be the perfect race for you if you're in the top 10. This could really work out in your favor. But as you see right now, Rob Malone, Monty Noise, they have the fast setups. Nobody has been able to do much with them except for George, but he didn't have a lot of help on that outside. So, if they have the long run setup, it's going to work in their favor. But it's still a very long race. A lot more can happen.
And talking about their teammate, of course, we see Jonathan Wallen, the number 11 machine, back there in third, and Jonah Hart, the number 26, in fourth. But how about that number 13 of Sean White, the other teammate there, back in fifth position? Do you think that he's going to try anything after the first pit stop to try to regain, or is it going to be a 1-2-3 car pit strategy from this team, or what would you expect to hear the communication between these three drivers?
Well, I think they're starting to realize that, now that they basically have the majority of the spots from teammates' perspective of the top 10, they realize if they can work together, they could end up taking the top 3 spots very easily here just on simple pit strategy. The more cars that pit with you is the more draft you're going to have out of the pits. But with them having 3 guys, if they can have some other people latch onto them, it could really help them out. But a lot of these other guys in this top 10, except for those 3, are really at a disadvantage going into this race now, because all 3 of those guys are definitely going to be working as teammates to make sure one of these guys, or if all 3 can swipe, just take over this Daytona 500.
And of course, we take a look back, starting at after P10. So Tim Phillips, the 7 machine, Matt Martin in the 20 machine. We're talking 11th, 12th position. Looks like they're starting to form a pack all on their own, maybe working together, and they themselves running into a little bit of lap traffic. And these 16 cars, we got more cars coming off of pit road back out onto the track. Some running too wide at certain points here on the track, as we see some of the guys coming down the front stretch here. This is just going to create more havoc here for Monty Noise up front.
Yeah, and something that I'm starting to realize here is there are some other cars here that look like they're at full speed. I'm looking back at the 7 car of Tim Phillips with the 20 and the 31 and the 18. Looks like those guys are actually running about a decent speed. So if those guys can catch a caution, maybe they can be back in the running of this 500, but they're going to have a caution to get back up to them.
And it looks like back behind them, that number 20 machine trying to hold on. Mike Ellis, the 31 car. back in 13th position, and back behind him, looks like Jason Brennan, the number 18 machine, struggling to keep up with those three cars there. And of course, we had the lap traffic up to the high side as well as they go through turn number 1 here.
Yeah, there's just, right now, I think everybody's really just kind of sorted themselves out here in the front pack. I think everybody's got the same mindset to get to the end. Now that the big one's already happened, there's no telling, well, it's really just about surviving. You know, I think for these guys up in the top 10, it's just they're just happy to be still in it with no damage. And for the guys like Mike Ellis and Tim Phillips, they need a caution to get back in this race, or they will be lapped here in probably about 10 to 15 laps.
And of course, we talk about those drivers being back in 12th, 13th position. Still on the lead lap. The first lap car now that we're taking a look back in 16th position is the number 27 car. Right there as we show him on the screen, that is Joe Cabin making his way in the backstretch to turn number 3. That is your current lucky dog. One lap down, and Scott Bolster here in the front stretch. Got a little draft partner there with him. Looks like that's the number 5 machine. There's 5 machine is Bolster, excuse me. He's working there with, I believe that's a 37. As they work their way into the backstretch, and I believe that is Sean King just ahead of them. There it is down the backstretch. So they're working together there, and just one of them things you just got to find somebody to stay competitive with, like you said, or they're going to end up a lap down as we're seeing more traffic up ahead here now for Monty Noyes heading into 2.
You know, one thing I know the viewers are asking is why, if these guys have damage, do they even want to run? Everybody always wants to win these. The thing is there's a very, very long schedule ahead of these guys, and they know every point at this time counts. Even if you're like the number 5 of Scott Bolster, that's P17, 11 laps down, he knows how important it is to stay in the top 20 because this race is going to be very important. These guys do have 2 drop races in this series, but nobody wants to use one of their 2 drop races on a 1 out of 36 race schedule.
And of course, talking about the Daytona 500 here tonight and the NASCAR iRacing series, this one is actually the one that goes the full distance, the full 500 miles, 200 laps here tonight at this speedway. But going forth in other races, it's about, I believe, about a half division as to what the actual series would run.
Yeah, a lot of these races are halfway distance. The big ones that iRacing is really focused on is all the main premier races. We got the Daytona 500, the Coca-Cola 600, the Brickyard 400. A lot of those big races are ones they want to run the full distance. So these iRacing drivers can get the actual feel of how long 500, 600 miles is. It's a very big thing for them. And now, you know, as we've only gotten less than 30 laps out of this run, you know, it kind of shows where. If it was only 70 to go, there'd be a lot more going on. But with it being a 200-lap race, this is just going to be a race of attrition and just being there at the end.
Very patient top 10 drivers here. No one wanting to make a move, but here in about the next 10, 11 laps, I think we're going to start to see a little bit of pit strategy, green flag pit strategy out of these drivers. And, of course, Monty Noyes, 27 laps led up front. Got to feel really solid about that coming into tonight. And if you're Doug George, again, drivers starting to the outside of that front row, currently running 8th. You feel it's got to be eating at him just a little bit. Being up in that front row, you would expect to be running right there behind Noyes, heading in, 29 laps into this, but unfortunately, he finds himself back in 8th position currently. What would he have to do, or what does he need to maintain here as composure-wise to ensure that he's going to try to make himself back up to that front?
I think he just needs to maintain his position right now, Dustin. I mean, he is in the top 10. He, like I've said many times already, he survived the big wreck of this race. There's not going to be a bigger wreck in this race than what happened on lap 1. There's just no way. I think he knows it can work on the outside, but the only way it'll matter if it works on the outside if he's there at the end. He's got the number 9 of Shane Van Gissenberg. He's got a very, very long resume of some great accomplishments. I think a lot of these guys are in the same position. I think all these guys that are up in the front are starting to realize, hey, there's some actual teammates up here, and if these guys don't work together to beat these teammates, this team might end up walking away with this. So it's going to be interesting to see, like you said, the 34 George, obviously he's got a very strong car, but he's going to have help if he's going to do on the outside.
As we take you on board here now with your race leader, the number 12, Monty Noyes. How about this 3-wide lap traffic coming up? We're going to pan the camera out just a little bit for you. Look at this. Into turn number 3, almost 3-wide action. How about this nail-biting moment Wow, the number 5 machine moving up to the high side. I can't even explain like the thought on Monty Noise there. Probably a little bit of prayer there in that 12 machine heading into that third turn.
Yeah, that would definitely be a scary situation, and I think he's going to have more of those. There's a lot of slow guys out here, and the thing that we got to keep in check as well is all these lap cars are still racing for position in some points. You know, they want to get as many points just as much as these guys in the top 10, but if they get caught in the wrong position, it could end up ending their race and many, many others, as we see Ryan Eckstein being lapped here.
And unfortunately, some of the drivers caught up in that. They, like you said, just trying to accumulate points here in this race. Still about 9 laps out from the first caution of the night. And again, more lap traffic up to the high side. As we look back behind Van Gissenbergen, looks like some of the cars there were trying to stick with him, was not able to do it. And it looks like more right there with Brad Miller in the front stretch, keeping low to that lap traffic. It's up to the high side.
Yeah, it just looks like right now these guys are trying to latch on, but the damage they have is just going to kill them. You know, there's a lot of tracks they can get away with. As we're coming up on another lap car, he wasn't going to hit the apron, but with damage here, aerodynamics means the world here at Daytona. It's just as important here as at Talladega or a Michigan or an Auto Club, where any kind of damage could really hurt you. So it's going to be really interesting.
And how about this lap traffic to the inside? A little change of pace as we see now Doug George passing by. Here comes Van Gissenbergen. And then Brad Miller able to stay to the high side. A little change. Typically, in super speedways like this, you want to see the lap traffic up to the high side. Fortunately, for that number 23 machine, not able to get up there in time as they were coming down like a freight train down that backstretch. Fortunately, was not able to get around Noise, so he had to stay low. And what does that do to these drivers' tires, knowing that they had to go up to the high side like that and probably expend more grip?
Well, that's something that I think we'll see a lot. You know, one thing about these super speedway races, it is common courtesy for the lap car to go high, but that doesn't mean it is necessary. They can run wherever they want. It is the leader's job to get around the lap car. The lap car does not necessarily have to move his line, but one thing that's interesting about that is when them having to run out to the outside in the middle of the turn, it really puts them in a bad position where it could get very, very tight on them having to make that move and hit the wall. So with that guy, he's probably going to be lapped a little bit more through this race, so it's going to be interesting to see if we get in the longer run and these guys have to pass cars, if they'll hit the wall or if they're able to keep it off.
And as we watch the drivers now here on lap 34 head into the backstretch, the ever-going green flag pit stop starts to loom in the mind. And as we see teammates working together, if you're Sean White back behind your two teammates who are currently at 1 and 2 in this race, what are you going to do to ensure? Are they going to try to fake a pit stop here to try to get the third and fourth, the Jonathan Wall and the Jono Hart car to bite on it, maybe head down pit road so they could get a 3-car heading in so they know they got draft coming off of pit road? Or what would you suggest, or what would you think the strategy would be for these three teammates?
I think the best idea they can have is have as many people with them as possible. If these guys decide to separate from the field, you're going to be at about a 7-car disadvantage if these other guys can stick with them, and that could end up hurting them in the long run. Now, if these guys can work it out where, you know, as this race progresses, that they can stay together and keep some guys with them, that'd be great. The best situation for these teammates is to have the top 3 positions, because if those guys have the top 3 positions, they're guaranteed to have the bottom no matter what, and that's going to take at least 5 to 6 cars on the outside to make even a run on them.
And as we see them head into the front stretch now, still holding to their positions. Pretty much no change of pace here from any of the drivers as we start to get closer and closer to the green flag pit stops.
Yeah, right now it's just looking like it's going to be one of these kind of races where everybody's hanging back. Really hated to see that many cars out. I think it really is going to take away from some of the excitement from this race, but there's still a lot of excitement that could happen here, Dustin. I mean, we got some really good drivers, it seems. They've been able to really kind of work together, and I think now it's just kind of filling out what lines everybody's going to run with. You know, we saw the 34 earlier try the outside. As you see the 9 hitting the wall almost here, so that might be something we might need to watch in here. Ooh, almost hit the 10.
And boy, did he come back down low right there behind Brad Miller, and that is Shane Van Gissenbergen, the Australian V8 Super Cup champion, right here in the front stretch. He's fallen a little bit off the pace. Now, if you're Van Gissenbergen, you fall off the pace like this, pretty much it's like letting go of a rope. You're going to start to fall back a little bit further.
Yeah, he is definitely in no man's land right now. If he does not get it going here, he could be in some issues. But it looks like this lap car that they're having to pass on the outside might help him. But when you're that last person in line, it really puts you in a bad spot where if you don't hold on to that draft, you could lose him very easily. And by himself, there would be no way to get back to the lead or to the front pack.
And it looks like he's catching some rear draft right there off of Brad Miller, and will rejoin right there with the number 10 in 10th position. So lucky break there for the number 5 of Sean Van Gissenbergen after getting a near close move on the wall. And what do you think, just picking your brain a little bit in that, is that just the little mental wear there for the number 9? Do you think he had a little mishap with the steering wheel? What do you think caused him? Because we're still seeing him running this higher line. I don't know if he thinks he's going to find something up there on the higher line. He's starting to develop a nasty push here in turn 2 as he comes off into the backstretch.
Well, this will definitely be the developing story on these long runs. Everybody was talking about this setup being tight, and I think we're seeing it out of Gissenberger right now. This is where these 3 months is going to really take in hand. You know, these other guys are doing fine, but every time into the turn, Dustin, he looks like he's drifting up. I don't know if he's doing that on purpose or not, but he's got to be careful. If he tries to do it too much, it might bite him, and he might hit the wall, and it'll end his chances of winning this.
And more lap traffic ahead now as we see the number 4 car to the high side. That is... I'm going to struggle with this name here. You might need to help me out, Mitchell. It looks like Adelia Pap Jr., and I probably really butchered that name there. Do apologize on that, but a nice-looking Stuart Haas paint scheme, kind of a retro Kevin Harvick meets Kurt Busch paint scheme there as he settles up right there behind Van Gissenbergen.
Yeah, right now I think, you know, as we get closer to these pit stops, you know, I really think a lot of these guys are going to be wanting tires. You know, the 9, like we said earlier, just can't keep it on the bottom, but you see these other guys are just right on the bottom. As we come up to 2-lap cars here, might be having a 3-wide situation coming up here.
As they work during the tri-oval into lap 40, and again, these are the cars we've seen earlier. That number 5 machine, one of the ones that created a tense moment there for Monty Noise into turn 3 about 7 laps ago, and that is Scott Bolster there on the number 5 car up to the high side.
Yeah, another thing, too, that I'm starting to see is the number 4 might be one of the first guys I've seen that they have lapped that is actually able to kind of hold it with them. He's got a little bit of damage, but one thing that's good about this draft here, Dustin, you can have a little bit of damage. As long as you're in the draft, it really won't hurt you. And I'm looking at the front end of the 4 here. He doesn't have a lot of front damage. That's going to really work in his favor as he's actually catching back up on these guys. The rear damage does matter, but we got pit stops here.
It looks like Jonathan Wall is going to make his way down on pit road. The first to take the bite here on lap 40, and it looks like Brad Miller as well will be right there behind him. We'll have to keep you updated there as we see the number 10 make his way onto pit road.
Yeah, this is going to be the time where it matters. If these guys can, it doesn't take a lot to mess up. If you go in and slide the tires too much, get a little sideways and go through the grass, it could end your chances at winning this 500. Right now, these guys have to be perfect at this, or it could cost them. You see the 9 making a run on George here.
Yeah, we've seen Van Gissenbergen passing Brad Miller to the outside before he went into the pit road on turn 3. And Van Gissenbergen is still working the outside line. So I'm thinking it's intentional this time. But once again, here now we see Monty Noise and Rob Maloney electing to stay out into lap 42. Maloney there having a little bit of issues coming across the line. Jonah Hart sticking with him. But that is going to be one car less for teammate Sean White back there in 4th position.
Yeah, and something that I just saw is Gussenberg just pitted by himself. Don't think that was the best move on his part. He was probably dealing with some handling issues there, but when it comes to the draft, you've got to have people go in with you, and with him pitting by himself, that really could cost him here coming back to the after pit stops.
And as we see now, both Jonathan Wall and Brad Miller being lapped here by Monty Noise as they are back out on the track anticipated, and now we're going to see, looks like Monty Noise coming down pit road. Here comes the lot. Teammates alike. Yeah, all 3 teammates there. Maloney, Sean White back there behind him as well. They're all going to hit the pit box as we follow your race leader to his pit stop here tonight. Of course, Monty Noise here leading the first 41 laps of this race right to the front pit box as he got the pole position here at Daytona. And he'll be looking to rejoin the field momentarily as we take a look. About
13's already running it coming out. Might have a little bit of lead on these guys.
Nice little battle there off of pit road. Here comes the other 2 teammates back behind him Doug George. And, of course, they are going to go right out to the track. Nobody electing to stay on that apron. And, whoa, right there in turn one. What a battle there with George and Noyes. And we're looking at about between a 13.8 for Doug George on his pit stop time and a 15.4 for Monty Noyes. So, nice little battle there. What do you think separated the two? Was it sheer hard work on the pit crew? Maybe a little bit less fuel for that 34 machine? What's your thoughts on that, Mitchell?
Definitely probably just had a better pit stop there. Another thing too is there's actually a big disadvantage having the first pit stall here. You don't have a good run out and you're really not at full speed, but it looks like the teammates have already gotten back by him, so not going to be a big deal for Monty Noyes. It looks like he's going to take the lead back, but with having that front pit stall, if you've got somebody else that's got about the 5th or 6th, they're going to be at full speed, and I think that's what the advantage was for George coming out there.
And as we see him move through the front stretch here, heading towards turn number 1. One pit stop in it, folks. 44 laps, soon to be in the books. We're going to take a short commercial break here on the Digital Forge Broadcast Network and our coverage of this NIS Daytona 500. So stay tuned, folks. We will be right back.
Welcome to Bristol Motor Speedway today, everyone. My name's Jerry Caldwell. I'm general manager here at Bristol, and we are certainly excited to have you. We've got some big news that we're announcing today. May of 2017, some exciting things happening. First time we've done something like this in quite a while here at Bristol. So take a look at the video and we'll come back.
Bristol. It's the world's fastest half mile, often called the last great Coliseum. And now, it's home to the U.S. Nationals of short track racing. Your favorite short track superstars come to Thunder Valley from 6 of your favorite short track divisions. Three tiers of late models are included as they take to the high banks. It's coming May 2017. Bristol, now home to the U.S. Nationals of short track racing. Dreams will become reality.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Exciting times in May 2017. That's May 19th through the 21st, 2017. The U.S. Nationals of Short Track Racing right here at Bristol Motor Speedway. We're so excited to welcome CRA and Cars, Southern Super Series, and all the racers and fans who are going to come join us for that. You're not going to want to miss it. This is going to be history in the making. We're going to reserve 3 spots, guaranteed provisionals for some of the NASCAR Cup guys. This will be the first time ever that we've had all these series together. Front-wheel drives, the modifieds, the pro late models, street stocks will join the super late models and the late model stocks. It's going to be a great weekend. You're going to want to come out and join us right here at Bristol Motor Speedway. Give us a call if you have questions, want more information. That'll be 423-BRISTOL, or you can visit us at bristolmotorspeedway.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, this Wednesday night here on the Digital Forge Broadcast Network and our coverage of the NIS. The NASCAR iRacing Series Daytona 500 underway. About 51 laps complete in this race tonight. Green flag pit stops have taken place. If you're just tuning in, I'm joined here. I'm Dustin Caldwell, joined with Mitchell Reeves here tonight, covering this. And we had a big incident on the first lap, opening lap. Major pileup, pretty much cut the field in half. And it's been these top 10 drivers that we're following here in the backstretch heading into turn 3. That's pretty much been the action out on the track. And Monty Noyes tonight, 47 laps led out there for number 12 with his teammate. And of course now we get to see Doug George back in third position, a guy who starts second outside of that first row here tonight. If you're Doug George, after that green flag pit stop run, how do you feel being in third position?
You got to be happy that you're just still in this front pack. We lost a couple drivers there on that last pit stop. It looks like the 9 and some of them other guys might have dropped back a little bit, so it's going to be interesting to see if they can make their way back up. But like we were talking about earlier, these 3 teammates of Shaun White, Shaun White, Rob Malone, and the number 12 Monty Noyes is going to be already still back up there. They're taking over 3 of the top 4 spots, so they got to be very, very happy and very, very confident moving into the latter parts of these races.
Definitely a good, successful green flag pit stop indeed. And as they come off of turn 4, we start to see more lap traffic ahead, something that's been the theme here tonight. And almost too wide here for Monty Noyes as he heads out the front stretch into the first turn. And take a look at this. Double wide action into turn 1. He's got to navigate with poise here.
Yeah, this is when it gets very interesting. We've already come up on this a lot, and we're only just about a quarter of the way through this race. You can't tell me we're going to have more of these situations, but in a weird way, though, Dustin, some of these guys that have already fallen off this front pack are really going to be hoping for a caution. They're going to have a caution to get back. This is obviously the biggest field still rolling on the super speedway right now, so they're definitely going to have something crazy happen to get back up to this front pack.
And of course, with the green flag pit stop action, 16 cars pretty much were on the lead lap. It looks like we're down to 14 as the number 7 of Tom Phillips, the last car on the lead lap. And then, boy, what a jump from that. I mean, we take a look at Pap Jr., the number 4 machine, as he comes off of turn 4 here. He's pretty much, would hate to call him your lucky dog at this point. He's not going to get back on the lead lap. He's looking about 5 laps down to your race leader at this point. But like you said, points is everything in this first race. Drivers know that they may have lost the battle here tonight, though there is still hope. And now we got a caution flag coming out.
It's like out of turn 3, the Robert Roche, the number 29.
We look at the number 29 here. He's down on the apron there. We'll go back and dial back a replay for you and capture that one. The 23 machine right with him, and he's going to push way up to the wall, gets loose right in front of the number 1 of Jeremiah Vincent, and a nice little spin. Now some sparks fly there in that third turn for Robert Roach, and he's just going to work the apron back to pit road.
Yeah, it looks like we were talking about earlier, these setups are really going to be on edge here, especially having to run all these laps, and it looks like it might have just moved up and it broke loose on him. Man, it was really, really tight there for the one. Very, very fortunate he did not get in that, and very fortunate for Robert Roach to not hit anything else more than just the apron. So now these guys have got to really got to figure out, they've got to pit here, but you've got to think that this is a sigh of relief for those guys that were about 20 seconds back. So this race isn't over. This is going to make it a 14-car race now.
As we see the replay yet again on board with the 29 of Roach. Had some front-end damage there on the car heading into that third turn already. You got to wonder if that kind of played in a little bit on his judgment as to where to put the car in the turn. Unfortunately, the crinkled-up bumper not helping whatsoever as far as maintaining draft.
Yeah, I think most of it might have just been frustration. You can't tell me these guys that have worked all winter really for this setup. For it to go like it has, it's got to be some frustration, really driving hard. But we're seeing all the leaders pit here, so we might have some change-ups here on pit road.
As we take a look down again, following your race leader, Monty Noyes, to his pit box. It's going to be a little battle coming off of this one. And again, Doug George, another opportunity to pass by the race leader here. And as we show you the pit exit here, it looks like George a little bit behind. Monty Noyes coming off of pit road. Here comes teammate Malone. And how about that? What a move by Sean White, the number 13 machine, to really crank it off of pit road. Looks like he's going to be sitting in third.
Yeah, something I saw there with George is it looked like he was just a little hot entering his pit box. Looked like he might have just gotten very, very close to the wall, and I really think that might have hurt his time there, Dustin. But one thing that's going to be really interesting to see on this restart is you have 3 teammates now that are going to be starting on the top 3. One of them is going to get left out there on the outside, but are they going to be able to work together to get the top 3 of those top 3 positions solidified before everybody comes and gets by them?
And being a team member yourself and working in different series with a lot of different teammates, being a 1, 2, 3, do we anticipate possibly seeing a little bit of pull away from the rest of the field, or do you think guys like Doug George and General Hart will have what it takes to stick with these 3 guys?
I think they'll be able to stick with them, Dustin, but I think the question is going to be is if they're going to be able to get by them. Monty Noyes, Doug George, Rob Malone, they all have very, very high iRating numbers. The 34, Doug George and Rob Malone, those, if just finishing in the 3rd place or better, is really going to give them a lot of iRating. See, these, as the viewers might not know, these guys are numbered by their iRating. The lower the number, the higher the iRating. So 37 people in this race being number 34 and being number 28 could have a lot of good stuff happen for their iRating. So right now, I think Doug George is just going to try to figure out a way to stay with them, maybe be there at the end, and maybe make his run to the front there with about maybe 20 to go.
Of course, as we take a look at the race summary, the rest of the field look like they're making their way down pit road. As we take a look at the race summary, 57 laps complete. This is going to bunch the field back up again. More of these drivers will get some more damage worked out on pit road, but it is going to get bunched up. And take a look at that pit stop time. As I take a look at it, Monty Noyes 14.6 seconds on that pit stop, and Malone 15.3. Of course, Doug George that time around had about a 14.5. Sean White 15.2, and he still came screaming off of pit road and got right there to be right with his 2 teammates.
Well, it's very ironic too. We were talking about how quick of a green flag pit stop Paul George had, so now that they're back to even playing field, I think he just had a bad pit stall. I think he can take a lot from what happened there. Kind of sliding a little on too far on the inside. Might have been hard for that jack man to get the jack up all the way on 1 or 2 pumps, and that might have been what costed him. So that's something he definitely needs to look or think about on his next pit road entrance. But one thing that's going to really be cool to see here, Dustin, this is really going to determine who has the car and who has the car to stay with the lead pack. A lot of these guys have damage, but these guys that have been running, 15, 16 seconds back, including Mike Ellis, Jason Brennan, Tony Bowling, all these guys have really not had a chance to see what their cars actually have. So now that they're back at the front pack, can they do anything, or can they even stay with the front pack?
And I believe we're going to see 3 cars get a wave around once the lights come off and we get the 1 to go signal back to green. It looks like Pap Jr. Cabin, possibly Scott Bolster, the number 5, may get a wave around here as they make their way now into the tri-oval to the start-finish line towards lap 59. wonder at what point these guys are going to gain a few little laps back. And again, every lap helping them to get closer and closer as we now see them start to pull away as the lights come off the pace car. And we'll be back green on lap number 60. As the pace car heads into turns 1 and 2, they begin bunching up double wide, and it's going to be teammates too wide. But again, the question here looming, surrounded by teammates, is that number 34 of Doug George to the high side, who's going to be the outside of Sean White.
Yeah, and something that we need to watch here on this start. We've already seen that George has the car to make the outside work, but you got to assume if he decides to push that car in front of him clear, he's going to drop in front of his teammates, and that may leave George out to dry. So we got the biggest field we've had here since the starting up at this pace car. So it's going to be interesting to see how these guys want to make it work. We haven't seen Mike Ellis up here at all, and he's got a little bit of damage, but he was able to run pretty good speed. Another guy we've been talking about a little bit is the number 9 of Gissenbergen. So we'll be able to see what he can do. But you got to tell me that these guys that are coming to the green right now are a little bit excited to finally see these leaders and maybe have a chance to see what they really got.
We'll have to see how this is going to play out, ladies and gentlemen, as they work their way through that fourth turn, heading to the front stretch. That Mustang iRacing pace car will make its way down pit road. As we take a look, they are ready to go back green on lap number 60. Here we go. Pace cars into the pits. Green flag flies. We're back to the race on lap number 60. As they fire off at turn 4, making their way into the front stretch yet again. What we predicted, Mitchell, it looks like it's coming true, but here comes a window of opportunity. He's going to take it as Doug George sinks down into that fourth position slot right there behind Jonathan Wall.
Yeah, on that restart, I think the teammates really worked very well together. I thought it was very interesting to see what they did. They showed that, it was very obvious that they wanted to get everybody to the bottom, and they found it looks like they opened up a hole for the 28 of Rob Malone to get in beside them. And as I was talking about, Dustin, the 34 was out to dry, and they're already single file. So I think these guys that are really actually in this field have already solidified. They want to get to the end. They want to run, but they know now they've got to work together to get by these three teammates. These are very fast guys. These guys aren't just up here because of luck. I mean, they've worked very hard together and very well together to get up to the top 3 positions. So now it's the question, can these people that really don't even know each other work together to pass these teammates?
And as we see him head into turn 1 here on lap 62, General Hart making his way up to the 34 of Doug George. And George is going to start to look like he's going to gain some room there on Jonathan Wall here in the backstretch as they begin to bunch up there, and you see the 14 of Mac Pratt as well making it, and Brad Miller back behind Pratt. How about take a look to the outside, Van Gissenbergen, still running this outside groove. I mean, he's making some outside passes, nearly getting into the danger zone there, and it looks like he wants to come back down, does not have the clearance to do so. You gotta wonder if that spotter is really on him. He'll get back there behind Brad Miller here in the front stretch.
Yeah, something I've really seen from him the whole night is he keeps trying to make that outside work. You know, if you run the outside, it might save your tires a little bit, but we saw him get in some trouble with the wall a little bit earlier, running that outside groove. He's probably got new tires on right now. I think he'll be okay, but you got to ask yourself, is the 9 trying to show everybody else, I want to run this outside, I need people to help me, but nobody seems to really be wanting to do anything, Dustin. I think everybody's just really, content with running. They know they got to get to the end to make anything happen, but you got to feel great for these guys like the 31 of Mike Ellis and the 17 that they're back in this and they might have a chance of winning this now.
We look 2 cars back or 3 cars back. The number 17 of Tony Bowling running the outside line just a little bit. You got to wonder if he's kind of signaling to Van Gissenbergen that he might, if he decides to go back up to the high side, he might go with him. But again, with this 100-degree temperature we're seeing here at Daytona, if any, is there an outside line here at this point?
Well, it showed early that there is an outside line. George showed very early in this race that, there is an outside line, and he had it. He made it work, but he had help. You're not going to be able to make it happen. I think by yourself, there's just no way. The big thing that's going to really play into factor is the side draft you're going to have to use to make it happen on the outside. As you see the 31 passing the 18 here on the bottom, it's just going to be interesting to see if they can make it work. But with those three teammates, Dustin, it's going to be very hard to see, or be very hard for these guys to work all together to pass those three teammates as they're showing how strong they are right now.
And of course, the number 18 of Jason Brayman will settle up behind the 17 of Tony Bowling. And again, talking about being in the back of the pack, we've seen the guys at the Jamich. How about the gapage between Brayman and Matt Martin? Martin back in a 13th position now in the backstretch, has the help of Tim Phillips behind him, and right behind them, we see multiple guys. Michael Smith Jr., the number 23 car, as well behind the number 7 machine, and they're really trying to work together. And I guess this is what you could call a point salvaging move right here with these guys working together in the second pack.
Yeah, and as I'm looking at the 20 of Matt Martin, it doesn't seem like he has damage, but another thing too is all these guys behind him probably do, but also that it's not working in his favor is the fact that it's not as big of a pack as the one in the front. They have about 2 to 3 more cars more in this front pack, so the more they run, you're going to see them pull away more, and they're actually pulling more speed into the entrance of the turns. The front pack's going about 203 miles an hour into the turns, as the second pack's only about 198, 199. So that little mile per hour difference is really going to start playing out a lot as this run goes on.
And the thought here is we stay green flag, and again, getting into the pits about lap 40, 41, 42, we're going to see probably similar coming up about 83, maybe 84.
And somebody recognized 3. 2 cars. It's like Carl Hayes and the Michael Smith, the 23.
And as we look to get that information for you on the screen, folks. Go back and take a look at that replay. There's the replay, and 3 wide action really caused the collision. There we see the spin out there by Michael Smith Jr. The number 13 machine as well to the infield. Again, dial back another one for you here.
Yeah, it looks like the Michael Smith was on the outside there, and there just wasn't a lot of room. We talked about it earlier. They're coming up on these slow cars very, very quickly. And with that being the issue there, there just wasn't a lot of room, and, you can't really fault anybody in there. I think that was just more of a racing deal, but, these guys have got to keep in mind, these guys are very, very slow out here, and they just caught them so quick, it was very hard to do anything.
And as we continue to watch the replay here, everybody looking to avoid it, and the flaps coming up on the 19 machine as he rolls to the infield. And Michael Smith Jr., up there on the track, we'll see the brunt of the damage as he had a head-on collision. The bumper completely destroyed on that car, and surviving that first caution, surviving the second caution, getting caught up in the third caution. It's just a tough night for some of these drivers out here on the field.
Yeah, it's got to be a tough break for some of these guys. Michael Smith, he was already having a rough night. He was P17, 14 laps down, had some damage, and the 19 of Carl Hayes had even a worse night. He was probably one of the slowest cars out here that had the damage, and he was going to be an issue, I think, moving forward anyway. I hated to see him get out, but in the grand scheme of things, really none of the contenders in this race was involved in that accident. So I don't see a lot of these guys pitting. I think we saw maybe Jonathan Wall come down and maybe one other guy, but everybody else decided to stay out there. I was kind of interested to see that, and surprised a lot of these guys actually stayed out.
Talking about being about 15 laps from your pit window. Going back to green in this, do you still maintain, how does this play into your strategy? Because, under caution, you're going to see a little bit cooler tires going around this track. Does that give you a little more longevity into your pit window, and is it more of a fuel issue at this point, or do they still maintain their pit strategy and look to hit pit road about 83, 84?
Well, it's going to be a little interesting to see how this all plays out. Now that these guys are on lap 70, and they're going to be hitting the lap 70 here very soon. You're talking about these guys that just pitted going. They're going to be able to make it to 110. Then it's going to be 150. Then it's going to be 190. So I think these guys that were the leaders realized you still have just the same amount of pit stops pitting here as staying out. But also one thing that's going to work in their favor is a lot of those people that stayed out will probably go in with them, so they'll have a lot of help. It looks like about 4 or 5 of these lap car or lead lap guys went in and pitted, so maybe they can work together, maybe make a run on this outside and challenge this great team of Monty Noyes, Rob Malone, and Sean White.
Definitely the top 3 guys being able to work together, being all a part of that same team. And, of course, you got Doug George back there in 4th position, Jonah Hart rounding out your top 5 as we bring it up on the screen and show you the differences there. And, of course, Doug George, the first driver that's not part of those 3 teammates, and we see some more cars coming down pit road.
Yeah, just looking at the front pack here, it's going to be very hard for these guys to make a move on these top 3 teammates. You know, they've been very fast. I'd like to see somebody try the outside, but I think they're thinking, long term. We're still not halfway even through this race yet, so there's there's about 130 laps left, so there's still a lot of time to figure your stuff out, get your ducks in a row, and really make a run. But you got to wonder if some of these guys are wondering, hey, let's maybe test that outside and see what we got going into the end of this race.
One of the interesting points I will bring up here on lap number 70, we've just gotten word that the number 9 of Shane Van Gissenbergen, the Australian Supercar V8 Supercar champion, has bowed out of the race. Not sure if there was what kind of issues was involved there, if he got caught up in that incident. Didn't really see him involved in it, but the word down from pit road that the number 9 is now out of the race.
And that's going to really be more than we thought. That's one of the 14 guys that were still on the lead lap. So now we're down to 13 cars that are still in contention for this race. We're really starting to narrow down this field really quickly. And the thing is if we have one big wreck here in the front, we could have less than 10 cars running for the race here.
And if we take a look back at the number 4 of Pap Jr., just 3 laps from getting back on the lead lap. So he's 3 laps down. Hope is starting to shine there for that number 4 car.
Yeah, with these cautions still coming out, and now that we got the field bunched up some more, it's going to be interesting to see if he can still make it happen. Right now is the question. We're bunched back up together. These lap cars are still trying to work together. You take out the top 10, a lot of these guys have not raced with anybody. They've been, kind of just getting around the track by themselves, avoiding the lead pack. And now that they're bunched up together, can they work together to, just get to the end? As we saw there with Michael Smith Jr. and the 19 of Carl Hayes, they had some issues right there. So is that going to be a reoccurring thing? That's what we're going to have to wait and watch.
A little hiccup there amongst the lineup, folks. We do apologize. Showing the number 20 of Matt Martin in the lead. Not exactly sure. I'm sure we'll get that worked out when we go back green, but the lights are off the pace car here on lap 71. Teammates for the top 3, Doug George back there in 4th position. He'll be to the outside of Sean White. And of course, now we see Martin slowing down there, realizing that race control onto his nifty little move there to be up front. He actually, I believe, will be credited with the lap led, sneaking one out of that. So I'm not sure how that will work out, if they're actually going to retract that back from him. But I think he was able to score. Whether it was intentional or not, I think he did end up getting a lap led. So it may end up becoming an official adjustment later on after this is all said and done here tonight. But folks, we are ready to go back green as we head into turn number 3 on lap 71.
Yeah, now we have the top 3 once again, teammates together again. Are they going to do the same thing? Is the 28 of Malone going to fit between Noyes and Sean White and leave George out to dry once again? We saw them go single file very, very quickly. Can they do it again?
Well, they make their way through turn number 4. The Mustang iRacing pace car will be set to go into the pits. We'll get the green flag. Here they come towards the front stretch. Getting ready to work their way into that tri-oval as the Mustang iRacing pace car dives into the pits. Here we go. Green flag flies. We're back to the race on lap 72. And as they work their way into the trioval yet again towards that 73rd lap under the green, how about Doug George? He got down. He's in 4th position right in front of the 26 of Jonah Hart, right behind the 13 of Sean White.
Yeah, as we saw in that restart, just as we thought was going to happen, the teammates once again pulled it off. The 28 pulled right between Sean White and Monty Noyes. I think that's going to be the strategy moving forward for them. If they can control these top 3 positions, I don't see how anybody's going to be able to touch them. These guys have got to start working together and figure out a way to get past them. If they don't, they're going to run away with this race.
How about that side-by-side action back there around 8th position with Mac Pratt to the high side of Brad Miller as they head through turns 3 and 4. Look at the gain right here with the 18 and the 17, both Brayman and Bowling. Now working their way up. That side-by-side draft has really got to be hurting that 14 machine that's to the outside.
Yeah, that's really the only way you're going to be able to stick up there by yourself. The side draft works for a while. As you can see, I'm actually getting a run back on Mike Ellis and the 10. You know, this is the only way he's going to be able to make it work. You can run as close as you can, but you always have that treacherous net code in iRacing. If you get too close, it could suck them together and end up making them wreck. But right now, he seems like he's trying to pull it off on the outside by himself.
And he's definitely holding right beside the 31 of Mike Ellis in the backstretch here on lap 74, and a little bit of a push there in turn 3, but he'll regain. It looks like now the side draft starting to fail. He's going to have to come back down in that lower groove.
Yeah, and I think the 10 actually radioed into him and said, go ahead and come down. We're just trying to ride right now. Let's just get to the end and we'll figure it out. So I think these guys are all trying to work together on just getting to the end. They know they got a good position. They just want to see if they can make it to the end, make their run. You know, right now I really think the only person that's got a shot at competing with these top 3 guys is George. He's been around the front the whole entire race. He's just got to find somebody that can push him on the outside.
And really, we're not going to see any kind of aggressive momentum until we get to about lap 190, I would think. And wow, are they just shooting right by that lap traffic right there.
Yeah, that was the 19 of Carl Hayes. He's been having some issues. Was caught up in that about a caution go. So we're going to see if he can maybe, keep it going. Like we said, he's just out there for points. He's running 21st right now, so he's just trying to get everything he can get.
Unbelievable job done here tonight by the number 12 of Monty Noyes. Total of 70 laps led here tonight. Of course, the only time he has not been up front is when he's been down on pit road getting a little bit of green flag. And, of course, we've seen some other drivers here tonight. Jonah Hart staying out just a little bit to get some laps led. What does it mean in the NASCAR iRacing series to have some laps led? Is there a little bit of bonus points there for these drivers?
Not really. It's basically all off results. But, it's always a good statistic to have. If you show you're the dominant driver, it gives you a lot more respect. And a lot of these people that, do the NIS Open Series really base their respect off a driver, off their stats. And people love having a lot of stats. And right now, Monty Noyes is doing a great job at building them.
And as we talk about that and these guys up front, and you mentioned earlier tonight here talking about iRating, it's definitely a pivotal thing if you wanted to maybe work your career down the road in the digital world to maybe like the Peak Antifreeze series and things of that nature.
Yes, definitely. If you're, one thing that the Peak Antifreeze series is very big on is iRating. One thing that is is probably the pinnacle thing to do is to run the Peak Antifreeze series. Be a part of the Ray Alfalas, the PJ Sturgis, the Kenny Humphreys. If you can compete with those guys, you're definitely at the pinnacle. And the first thing is building great setups. As we see here, the top 3, they have obviously got a great setup under them. But, you're talking about Ray Alfala being at a 7,000 iRating. We're in the 4th split actually right now that, I think the range is anywhere from about 3,500 to about, 3,300. It's not a very bad iRating. The average iRating is anywhere from about 28 to 2,400. That is the average iRating for the iRacing community. If you're anywhere above that, you're definitely, doing great. But having that 4,000 iRating is really just a personal accomplishment. It's all about the setup building and being consistent in races that's going to get you in the Peak Antifreeze series.
So it's not necessarily more, the racing is the major point of it, but there's more of an adventure of the behind-the-scenes work that goes into getting them here to this race day. Because, we talked about it earlier tonight, Mitchell. We've seen these drivers who put hours upon hours in to get taken out early on in this race. Really a heartbreak moment for a lot of those drivers, merely, like we said, halving the field. But, week in and week out, it's a long haul with a season ahead. And these drivers, some of them earlier than others, having to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, and, one thing that a lot of people forget about in this iRacing simulator is, we are all drivers, but with that being said, we have a pit crew that changes our tires, but when it comes to the setups, it's on the driver to themselves. I feel like as we looked at I was looking at the front three cars earlier, they're Shaun White powered, so I'm assuming Shaun White built their setup. They're all running the same setup. That might be why they're running it so great together, but it's always a driver that has to build that setup. It's very rare that you see somebody completely dedicated to crew chief abilities only. Everybody's out here to race, but they got to be fast, so sometimes they have to build their own setups to make it happen.
And as we see now, it looks like Shaun White just a little bit off the pace, some spacing here on lap number 80. And this is the point where we were talking about last when the caution was out around lap 66. What was the pit strategy here for these drivers, getting back down on pit road yet again? When were they going to come? When were they going to look at?
They're looking right at. They're going to be getting close. They had a pretty good run there. I'm going to say anywhere in probably the next 10 to 20 laps is going to be our next pit stop here. But the question is how many are actually going to go down? As we see the 18 pitting right now, but we know that the 14, the 10, and the 17 who's lingering on the end of this pack have already pitted. But they will have a smaller group. So can these guys in the top four, pull back up to them when they have to pit? That could really change it up. So, if without a caution, we could really see some separation in this front pack.
And of course, a team that has been on it tonight, that 34 of Doug George, really been a contender. And I mean, he's hanging with them now. And we're just getting word down on pit road that number 18 of Jason Brayman has bowed out of the race. Not sure if there's mechanical issues on that car, but he's bowing out of the race here on lap 81 in 13th position.
Yeah, and that's going to take another person off this lead lap. We've been really kind of getting it lingered down here, and now that we're down to 12 people, these three teammates actually make up about a quarter of the actual field, the actual top 12 now.
We talk about guys like Pap Jr. trying to climb back. I mean, Pap Jr., though he's 3 laps down, with Brayman backing out, he's going to have a chance to get into 13th at least. So more points to be had there for the number 4.
Oh, definitely. And right now, everybody that drops, it gives those people behind them more motivation to keep going. The more people that drop, that's just another position. And in some situations, Dustin, one position could go a lot further than people think.
As we see him head into lap number 83, we begin to start questioning, when will these top 3 drivers hit pit road? And the question is, will Doug George be ready?
Yeah, he's definitely going to be having it in the back of his mind. When are these guys pitting? He definitely wants to try to pit with them because there's not many people behind him that are not going or that are going to stay out, and he does not want to be left by himself. These 3 teammates right now are kind of going to be deciding this race, and right now Doug George has got to be figuring it out in his mind. How is he going to break this tandem up? He's got to have some people with him, and if he doesn't, they're going to have this race in the bag.
And every chance out of turn 4. I'm sure we're going to see a little bit of holding of breath out of the rest of the field, because you got to wonder, with these other 3 drivers, I mean, these 3 drivers setting the tone of this race. I mean, we see the pack right here heading into turn 1 on lap 84. Some of these drivers who stayed out, how close do you think they are on fuel? I mean, I'm sure it's a fuel mileage game right now. And obviously, the caution about 15 laps ago helping out the cause. But, if they're not on the same pit strategy as these front 3 drivers, they got to dive in solo.
Yeah, and that's one thing that these top 5 have got to think about is, they've got to work together here. Although the top 3 have been very dominant, the 4 or 5 that stayed out could work together. And one car more in your draft can really make a big difference in the long haul of this race. So they all got to try to figure out, and they got to communicate and be like, hey guys, we got to work together here to get off pit road, keep going, or we could lose the lead pack.
Well, we are into lap number 85 now, starting to think once again about that 40-lap pit window. And they're really extending beyond it. And of course, how much would you say, I mean, on a day like this, triple-digit temperatures, how much would a caution, how many more laps would you say a caution would give you past your pit window?
Well, it all depends on the driver. One thing that's really cool is we're able to shut off the cars. You're able to clutch them. You can turn a 40-lap run into about a 42, 43-lap run on saving tires saving fuel. So as this race goes on, you got to ask yourself, well, we have a caution. If we're on that, the verge of that window, can we make it work? Because you got to right now. Doug George has got to be asking himself, I've got to figure out a way to get by these guys. If it's not on the track, maybe it's got to be on pit road. But right now, there's a lot of limited options. You know, the fuel strategy right now is very unknown. We're still not even halfway in this race, so a lot more can change as fuel strategies. We're coming up on 2-lap cars now.
And as we took a look last time, the little body language signaling there from the 13 to Sean White, I'm anticipating to see him come down pit road this time by, as he did sway towards that yellow line right at the pit window. And oh my, what a maneuver. This could be some interesting things if they want to go down pit road and box out Doug George. And there we see a little bit of sway again to the yellow line. So not this time around into lap 87, but folks, you gotta wonder, the battle yet again on pit road under the green definitely going to take place here in the next few laps.
Yeah, and right now, George has got to really watch the 13. That time that 13 makes the move is going to be deciding when he's going to do it. So right now, we're going to see what they decide to do. Will they make the pit stop now? Will they wait some more laps? And we'll have to just play it out.
And nearing the halfway point, I mean, do we see any kind of trickery out of these three drivers? I mean, they know they're the dominant one, but they know that this 34 car back there in fourth could possibly give them a run for their money. Do they try to fake it out here, or do they actually just settle up and let them come with them?
You have to think right now they're going to have to want them to come with them. There's about 4 or 5 guys that went in, and they're going to have to. That's going to be their time to make up the time on this field. With it being 4 to 5 cars that still got to pit, it's really up to them if they're going to be able to work together to get these spots back.
Into the backstretch here on lap number 88. Monty Noyes, 82 laps, led the number 28 of Rob Malone. Back there in second, Sean White, the number 13 in third. Doug George and Jono Hart, your top 5 here, folks, for the Daytona 500 here on iRacing. And it looks like not this time by. Wow, they are really, really extending out and trying to separate themselves. I mean, every lap at this point is a toss-up, and when these 3 guys are going to go down pit road.
Yeah, and right now you got to be thinking, when are they going to pit? And the guys behind them have got to wonder, hey, when they pit, we've got to work together to make it work.
And then if you're guys like Mike Ellis that is back there in 7th position, obviously we're going to see guys start to get on pit road. The checkup reaction out of these drivers definitely slowing up a little bit, trying to get to their pit boxes. I mean, does it create a little bit of struggle issue there for guys back past the top 5?
Well, you got to be thinking that's why he's trying to keep his distance. He knows these guys are going to be getting close on fuel. He knows that they're going to have to make their move. One thing they did very well, and I was very impressed by, was these top 3, is they got off the track very quickly, very cleanly. So that might, be after watching that last time, maybe kind of eases the mind a little bit. These guys are a little bit experienced in front of you. They know how to enter pit, so maybe you can be a little bit more aggressive and try to make up a little bit more time as they're entering.
And here we are on lap number 90, folks. The number 12 of Monty Noyes into the third turn, working it down low. Will this be the time that they jump for that second green flag pit stop of the night? And again, they go right by. You got to wonder, and again, as mentioned this earlier, you got to wonder with guys like Mike Ellis back there, Mac Pratt, Brad Miller, that may not be on the same pit strategy. They pretty much are shrugging their shoulders at this point, knowing that they got to hold with it, and whether they got the fuel or not, they pretty much got to. It's a win or lose without the draw at this point, because if they don't go with the pack, they're probably not going to see the pack unless a caution flag would come out.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest worry right now with all these guys is they know that the pit strategy is going to be a little bit separated, and you got to be watching these guys when they're actually going to pit. So it could be very interesting.
And that caution flag definitely extending the run here for the top 3 drivers, Noyes, Malone, and White, as again into lap 92. They remain out on the field, continuing this race up front. Top 3 positions, Doug George back fourth, Joe Hart, your top 5.
Yeah, and something to be kind of looking at here, Dustin. These backfield, the 27, the 3, and the 4 are actually 3 wide here with Tim Phillips leading this pack. But this has been the biggest battle on the track right now as they're 3 wide out of turn 2.
As we see Tim Phillips, continuing back behind him with the number 20 in the mix as well. That is Matt Martin. Double wide action. Again, as we jump back up front, just checking on Monty Noise. Single file action through the front stretch into lap 93. We bring the camera back to Matt Martin and Pap Jr. as they work their way through the front stretch. The number 4 of Pap Jr. to the high side. Again, Pap Jr. trying to get back on the lead lap. 3 laps down, he is your lucky dog.
Yeah, and listening to the radio communication, there's a little bit of frustration coming out of this rear pack. A lot of people getting aggressive. I think a lot of the frustration from this early wreck starting to get to these guys, not having a chance at this race. So they're racing each other really, really hard. So this is going to be something very, very interesting to watch as we move forward.
Here we are into lap 94 of this race, and they are still out on that field. Monty Noise leads them into 1, and they are still going. Still has not seen anybody break off. And as we look back to Brad Miller and Tony Bowling, the last in the pack, the number 17 machine there as he worked their way into the backstretch. Still sticking with Brad Miller. And, are they going for 100? Do you think they're going to try to take it to the triple digits in pit, or do you think it's going to be before it?
Well, if they can make it to about, right now, they're actually in this window where they can make this race on 2 pit stops. I think they're trying to keep the gap between them and the guys that pitted that last caution as much as the gap is minimum as possible, so there won't be a big difference. And if they can make it to 100, that's great, but it's not going to change if it's going to make it a 2 or 3 pit stop race. So, it's really just going to be up to these guys. I think their odds are is let's just run it out. It's going to open up our strategy maybe a little bit more as they're moving forward.
And again, following these top 10 drivers through the backstretch into the 3rd turn yet again. The momentum that is out there on this track with this draft pack. We see guys get closer, fall back, get almost like an accordion effect in these top 10. Still, we look back at Tony Bowling, 10th position driver in the front stretch into lap 96. I'm thinking here, Mitchell, they're going to extend it out to triple digits before they hit pit road for the 2nd time.
Yeah, and right now we're actually seeing whether Brian Wilds is going to pit here. I don't think he's really been a factor, but it's showing that these people are starting to run out of fuel. Maybe this means that the pitting is going to begin here, so we really need to keep an eye on these guys. I know they're going to be getting really close on the fuel.
Following your race leaders, a little bit of sway action there out of the 28 of Rob Malone in turn 3. As they work their way off the 4th turn into the front stretch, will we see pit road this time? Not quite. They are going to extend on. The rest of the field unaffected here in the top 10 as they head into lap number 97.
Yeah, and as we're coming out of turn 4 here, it's looking like this little second pack is starting to get a little bit more interesting. They're coming up on lap cars, and it's getting a little bit crazy back here.
As we watch the number 7 of Tim Phillips working the low line and the high side, and the driver there up on the high side, that orange machine. How about that? This looks like a Tour modified up there with the front end missing on it. Oh, and Phillips. How about that? Phillips ejected to the high side in the backstretch. It's going to send a few cars in underneath him.
Yeah, this is going to be the best battle on the track right now. We see the leaders still go by pit road with not pitting. These guys are really, I think, just trying to have some fun. They've been battling pretty hard. There's been some close wrecks, but they're still keeping it together. So maybe we'll see some good racing out of this bunch.
And as watching the second pack, Phillips to the high side, losing out as he's now behind Pat Jr. And that is Matt Martin, the number 20 machine, to the inside as they work their way in the front stretch. And man, taking a look at some of these other cars involved, the damage out there and the commitment for these drivers to stay out on the field, as you said, trying to accumulate as much points as possible.
Yeah, you really have to have some commitment to do this. I can only imagine. I have not personally been wrecked out the first lap of a 200-lap race and still decided to want to continue. I could see where they would want to quit, use that drop weight, not worry about it. But, you start realizing and doing the math. It's like, man, if my car is still pretty good, let's just keep rolling with it. A perfect example, Ryan Eckstein in the number 2 is 18 laps down, but he's in 16th place. So, I mean, he can really kind of, debate if he wants to use this as a drop race. So it's a perfect situation where, I'm out of this race, but I can still get the points.
And how about the front end of that? Of course, the driver I alluded to earlier, looking like a Tour modified there, missing the front bumper on that machine, but the commitment out of this driver to maintain on the track and work his way around. And now here on lap 99, we see him head by pit road yet again. The top 10 into triple digits now here at Daytona.
Yeah, we finally reached the halfway mark. So now these guys have to start figuring out, if we got the strategy down, let's just figure out how to work together and make it work.
Of course, we watch him through turns 1 and 2 into the backstretch. Monty Noyes, 94 laps led here for the number 12, works his way into the third turn. We gotta wonder, will this lap 100 be the lap that they get the call into pit road? And they start swaying. Here they come, ladies and gentlemen, lap 100. Shaun White and company. And how about this? The rest of the field goes on by. Jonah Hart, Jonathan Wall, Mike Ellis, Brad Miller, Tony Bowling all go by. So 5 cars remain out on the field in this green flag pit stop here as we're watching. Now Monty Noyes make his way to his pit box.
Yeah, George had a much better entry right there, but those 5 cars that stayed out, those are the ones that we were talking about that pitted a little bit earlier, pitted on that last caution. So this is going to be a big deciding factor. Can this pack that just pitted keep up and stay with that pack, or will they actually get past them and make this a 5-car race?
So as we watch him come off of pit road, folks, Monty Noyes, of course, had the faster pit stop time. That time, 13.4 seconds. Doug George back behind him with a 15.5. Rob Malone, 14.8. And they're going to settle up in 8th, 9th, and 10th. And, of course, Doug George edging out Shaun White on that pit stop. Shaun White had a 16 flat pit stop time there as they're now passing Ryan Eckstein in the backstretch. We see Doug George to the inside heading into turn 3.
Yeah, another thing to kind of keep an eye on. These guys are really, really separated. You know, right now they need to be working together, saying, "Hey, let's back up to this and let's get together." This separation right here could really hurt them, as the front pack together is still going to be a little bit. They're still running pretty quick, and right now those 4 cars that tight together is really going to start making up some time on them. They really need to figure out a way to get back all together.
And as we see now, Jonathan Wall, Mike Ellis, Brad Miller, Tony Bowling into turn number 1 here on lap 103, looking to catch up with the drivers who had pitted just earlier as they now work their way out of 2 into the backstretch.
Yeah, this will be a very big testament to see how much of a difference these 4 cars compared to 5 cars that are pretty separated, can they catch them or not?
Not too far away. I mean, as we watch him, Monty Noyes come off of turn number 4, Jonathan Wall, they are right there with him in the front stretch, really running down these cars.
Yeah, and if they can figure out a way to get to their draft and stick right with them, you know, it's going to be very, very even. It seems like the 5 cars finally got back together. So can these 4 cars right here pick or get to these people? Because, you know, they got to be close on fuel too. I think right now their pit road window is going to be anywhere from 108 to about 114 is their pit road window. So it's going to be interesting if they can, you know, catch up on these guys. It looks like they are. There's a little bit difference in time, about a 0.3 difference on the back pack.
And, of course, they are gaining on the number 14 machine just ahead. Mac Pratt currently running 12th position. And there we see the 13 of Shaun White just ahead. And these drivers now looking to catch right up with him. A little invert action here heading towards turn number 1.
Yeah, and something to look a little bit forward to, Dustin. We got 3 lap cars that are, actually 2 of them are side by side as they're coming up. This might get a little bit dicey.
As we bring the camera down to the action. Number 27 up to the high side, and Monty Noyes. Oh my, how about that? He's going to thread him right into the middle, forcing one down onto the apron. A very, very, I can't even describe the words for it right now. Very aggressive, but very scary to say the least. This late past the halfway point in the race.
Yeah, I heard him keep on the mic. We're going in the middle. I couldn't believe I heard this. But Monty Noy said, we're threading the needle. We're threading the needle. And, man, he sure did thread it. That was really crazy. And as we're listening to the radio communication, there is a lot of frustration from that move right there.
Confidence out of the crew chief and spotters alike to make that kind of move, especially when you've been dominant here in the Daytona 500 and just really working. He did it. He made it look really easy. But I'm definitely sure he made two enemies there on the inside and the out.
Yeah, and for the first time in a while, we're seeing the 13 try the outside. 14 really pushed him up. I think that they were trying to figure out a way to get the teammates together. Really got close to the guy in fourth place there. So we're going to see if the 13 can figure out a way to get back up there. But this little separation, that's one less card that the 34, who we talked about all night, Doug George, has a chance. He's in P3. He may figure out a way to get by these guys now.
And, of course, Jonathan Wall still up front of the field. He's got 6 laps led. If you jump back a little bit, he is right there, back behind that 14 machine of Mac Pratt.
Yeah, and something we'll have to watch here. The guys that are in front of him, in front of Jonathan Wall, are actually not a lap down. They're on the tail end. A caution right here could be very, very huge for them. But if this stays green, it'll be interesting to see how these 4 cars that are still waiting to pit will fan out here after they make their pit stop.
And as we see them head into the front stretch, they are staying out here. And again, into lap number 108, talking about the pit window. This is about where we said they would be, Mitchell. I mean, they're heading into turn 1. You're right behind your opposition. How quick do you think they need out of their pit stop to be able to remain competitive and be right with these drivers when they make it around the track?
Well, I think the quickness will come out of how clean this pit stop is going to be. As the Matt Martin, number 20, said he is going to pit right now. He was in that same pit stop with those guys, so they're going to be probably pitting here in the next lap or two. I would be very surprised. I would not be surprised to see the 11 and everybody else come down right here.
And as we take a look, they will stay out. Matt Martin, Brad Miller, top 5 Matt Martin, of course, back in 5th position with the 7 of Tim Phillips right there behind him. The number 33 machine in the mix as well. Matt Martin back in 5th position. He's a little bit further behind than what we've seen with Jonathan Wall, and this time by, and here comes a lot Tim Phillips and Matt Martin as well, now making their way down pit road.
Yeah, this is going to be the interesting time. We've been talking about it. Can they keep it together well enough to where they can get back in front of this lead pack?
Of course, as we see Matt Martin making his way into his pit box there, we're going to jump back and take a look at Jonathan Wall as he comes off of turn 4. Will this be the way they go? They are going to sail by the pit road window this time by into lap 110. So they are now extending their ticker into the red section of that fuel window, trying to look to gain as much. And the strategy in this is, like you mentioned, getting that clean pit stop, but also trying to give himself enough time to get down pit road and back out before the cars make it all the way around the track so they can maintain that lead.
Yeah, another thing, too, to think about here. These guys pitted about 42 laps ago, and they've been in the draft. If they could somehow figure out a way to push this fuel window to 120, they could really actually make this on one more pit stop where these guys in front, no doubt, have to pit 2 more times.
And again, we see the number 11 of Jonathan Wall passing by the start-finish line into lap 111. When will they hit pit road, folks? That is the question. I mean, we are out here watching these drivers. Though the field got half early on tonight, I think we're seeing a great fuel strategy amongst 2 different packs of cars and their mindsets to beat one another out.
Well, if I just heard over the radio, Dustin, it looks like the 11, the 31, the 17, or 10 are going to pit this time by, so I think pit road might get a little busy here.
Of course, we see the number 1 up to the high side, Jeremiah Vincent. And as we see Jonathan Wall slowing up to the inside. Second round of pit stops comes for the second pack. That is going to send Monty Noise and company around as they now make their way to the pit box. Folks, green flag pit stops underway here at Daytona. We appreciate you tuning into the Digital Forge Broadcasting Network. We're going to take a short commercial break. More race action to come your way, so stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back.
was interesting this morning to come out here and get on the track and look closely at how rubber was starting to kind of take to the track, you know, where there were ruts and spots that looked still like dirt, and other spots were super shiny and had a bluish tint.
We scanned this track twice because we needed to be able to measure the differences between the track before it's raced and after it's raced. With dirt track racing, the dynamics of the track change dramatically once it's raced on throughout the race. And by scanning it beforehand, we were able to gain a baseline that we're now able to compare with the scan from after the race. Take a look at the cushion, see where it's built up, see how deep it is, and try to figure out some of these variables that we'll have to account for when we create our digital representations of dirt racing and dirt tracks. Our associate producer, Kevin Einarelli, was actually quite the soldier, and he stayed here all night scanning so that we could get this second scan, because in the morning after the race, they ripped the track up. So the window that we have to collect that data is very limited. So thanks, Kevin. So we had a similar approach with the photography of this track that we had with the laser scan. We photographed it twice. So we were able to get in here right before the race started, right after all the trucks had finished running the track in, and take reference photography of the track. And then we returned today and took another set of reference photography, and we took photos of all the various elements that we need to account for: the cushion, the groove, the areas of the groove that have received rubber, and the apron. And we have a specific technique that we use to take these shots. We are using something called photogrammetry. What photogrammetry is essentially the science or a method which will allow us to take photographs and extract three-dimensionality from them using common elements between the photographs. And it's a great technique to create textures for our racing sim, and it's something we've been doing for a while, but it's especially helpful with dirt because of the three-dimensional characteristics of the dirt and the way it collects. So it's a really good technique, and it should result in a great looking racetrack.
A lot of what I'm seeing kind of confirms what we already believed and already knew and have already started working on. So, you know, my plan is to get together with Dave Kamer and get in detail about what's going on between the tire and the road, because the ruts seem to be a significant piece of the puzzle, where the rubber shows up on top of the rut. So getting the tire grip correct on a track that has as much variation as a dirt track does is going to be key.
We know that every racetrack, every dirt racetrack is unique. Different soil compositions, different color, different types of grooves develop depending on the different types of cars. So this process that we've gone through this weekend is not going to be a one-off thing. We're going to do it again, increase our knowledge, and we'll take that knowledge home with us, and it will help us create a better version of these tracks in iRacing.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, this Wednesday night to the Daytona 500 NASCAR iRacing Series here on the Digital Forge Broadcasting Network. I'm Dustin Caldwell, joined with Mitchell Reeves here tonight, and about 118 laps deep into this one, 99 laps led for Monty Noise. Last we left you before commercial break, Jonathan Wall and Company getting down for their second green flag pit stop on tonight. Now we are back underway. Everybody pretty much bunched back up. Mitchell, tell us your thoughts here on the final strategies as we head towards closer and closer to that 200 lap mark.
Well, the thing is, with that pit stop, that really showed me a lot about, you know, the momentum the momentum that is with this whole thing. When we were with them there, when the 4 cars pitted, they kept the lead there for about 2 or 3 laps, and then Monty Noise and crew just blew by them, and in that process, they actually went pulled away from Mike Ellis. So this pack has lost one guy. They're down to 9 cars, but both packs that have pitted on the 2 different separate pit strategies, they're going to have to pit twice no matter what.
And as we take you down on board here with the number 34 of Doug George, a driver here tonight pretty much solo amongst 3 teammates for the majority of this race. Currently running third. He started second here tonight, right to the outside of number 12, Monty Noise, and he right now sitting in third position through the tri-oval into the first turn. Got to wonder here if he's got anything in store here on the next 80 laps for these guys ahead of him.
Well, one thing that I've been trying to figure out is the strategy the 13 is going to have. The 13 is going to be kind of sitting in the catbird seat of this. Even though the 34 is in third place, the 34 will probably initiate this high line move whenever it does happen. But the 13 has a very tough decision to make. It's to go with 2 people that he does not know are the teammates. Personal preference, probably going to go with the teammates, so George definitely has to keep that in the back of his mind. Right now, Dustin, as long as these 3 teammates are in the top 5 or better, I just don't seem to be anybody being able to get around them.
Of course, having the luxury of a caution flag before their second green flag pit stop of the night, electing to stay out during the caution around lap 64 to lap 66. These guys now looking at least one more pit stop here tonight, if not 2, pending the fact we don't see another caution here tonight. What do you think as far as Jonathan, your Jonathan Wall, put yourself in that 11 car's position back in 6th. You just pitted a little bit later. You can make it run. Do you think he's got enough to go the distance, or do you think he'll have to at least see one more pit stop tonight?
He's probably going to have to see it probably about 2 more pit stops. They pitted on lap 112. Right now, from looking at both of the stats from both teams or both groups there, they made it right at exactly 40 laps. So he is going to be probably looking at about lap 152. That's going to put him 8 laps short. So it's almost nearly impossible to save 8 laps of fuel with the draft and saving, because by the time you save 8 laps, they're going to catch back up to you. So right now, everybody's going to have to pit at least 2 more times with a short pit at the end, which that might be the strategy call for a lot of these teams.
And of course, a lot of these guys out here tonight all running solo, no team members. The advantage here of that number 12, the 28, and the 13. Drivers that we've seen looking really solid here, been up in the top 3 quite a bit. Sean White, the straggler there amongst the other 2 drivers, currently in 5th position, right there behind the number 26 of Jonah Hart.
Yeah, and right now everybody's back to their single file ways. I think everybody's starting to realize this is going to become a strategy race. Right now I'd hate to be in the 34 shoes. You want to make a move, but there's people behind you that you're really, uncertain if they're going to follow you. We have to believe the 13 is going to go with the teammates no matter what. So really and truly, he's only got 1 car behind him that might be willing to follow, but we really don't know the setup of that guy. That guy's name is actually going to be John Hart. We've talked a little bit about him, but we haven't seen much out of him. The 34 has really been the only one to challenge the front, and I really think these 3 teammates might have a pretty good shot at winning this thing.
And of course, we've seen time and time again. I'm gonna pick your brain here, take you back to times when you're running with the Southeast Motorsports crew. We've seen you sit far as deep as probably Mac Pratt, back there behind Jonathan Wall in 7th position. We've seen you in your car run that deep in the pack here with about 4 to go and really find somebody out there and really work with them and just somehow, some way find yourself up at the front, come off of turn 4.
Yeah, one thing that you always got to ask yourself as a teammate, and this is probably the downside for me. When you go into those final laps and you have teammates in the running for this race, you ask yourself, how much of a teammate do I want to be? And right now, it's going to be a tough decision. I think with official races and this being the first race of a very long NIS series, a top 3 for all these teammates would not be a bad idea. But the only way you're going to be able to make this work is the 34, and just this would be an example. The 34 is going to have to back up to the 26. And with the draft package that iRacing has been able to bring to us here with the Gen 6s, you have to keep that guy on your bumper. The other downside of that, though, is you got to keep him cool. So the only way the 34 is going to be able to make a move is back up to John O'Hart, and they're going to have to stay together. But that also brings in another factor, which is the bumper hook. We actually saw that on the first lap. That took a lot of these guys out, but that's just the only way you're going to be able to have a lot of speed through these turns.
And again, talking about teammates finishing in the top 3, of course, 2 teammates up there, 1-2, and we're following the 13 here of Sean White back in 5th position. If Sean White would decide to make a move to jump to 3rd, could that be an advantage for the 34 of Doug George?
Well, in some terms, I believe yes, because then everybody behind you, if you make that move, they're going to be like, hey, let's go for it. The 13 is going to be kind of the person that's going to put a monkey wrench in this whole situation, because the 13 is going to kind of kill everything the 34 might try to do. In some terms, it might not be a bad idea for the 34 to figure out a way to get the 13 up to him, because I don't know these teammates. They may make it interesting and try to race for it at the end, but I highly doubt, it being the first race, they're going to make a crazy move to try to pass another teammate and possibly put him in a wrecking situation. So George has really got a lot of things to think about moving forward in this race. Can he get somebody fast enough and talented enough to follow him? And if he gets to the outside, can he complete the pass?
And of course, talking about the outside, Shane Van Grissenberger, one of the drivers we've seen, the Australian V8 Supercar winner, champion, I should say. I think he probably would have been one of the guys you would want to have on the outside. Of course, that number 9 machine running up in there has bowed out of the race at this point. Currently sitting 25th overall, but looked like one of the drivers really that could work that outside group, just didn't have anybody to go with him.
Yeah, and I think he had some setup issues too, but he definitely made it very interesting and very obvious that he wanted to try to make the outside work. The only people we've seen been able to push very, very well this race and actually show his power is the 14. Haven't talked too much about him tonight. 14 of Matt Pratt. He showed earlier that he can push very, very well. I'd have to say one of my dark horse picks this race is going to have to be that 11 or 14. They're sitting back there. They're in probably the best position with these teammates in front, because everybody behind them can follow. Don't know what the status on the 10 and the 17 are damage-wise, but if everybody's got a clean car in this front pack, they could make a run. The question is when.
And if all 4 cars would decide to hook up and run that outside line, do you think they have anything for the drivers just ahead?
Well, if they know how to work the side draft, and that's something very vital in these cars is the side draft, they can make it work. It's a very aggressive move, but you got to start thinking, man, these guys have led this race the whole time. Are we just going to sit here and take a 7th place? If it were me, I'd definitely have to try to go for it. I'm not one of those guys to be able to just sit here and run single file like this. I'd be just scratching my eyeballs out if it were me. But you got to see what you can try to do, and right now would be a good time to just see what you actually have so you can work on your move at the end of this race.
Of course, drivers heading into turn 4 now on lap 129, getting closer and closer here, possibly to another pit window coming up. And Monty Noyes looking now at 111 laps led in this Daytona 500.
Yeah, and a developing story we got here, Justin. This lead pack is starting to catch a lapped pack of about 5 or 6 cars. This is going to make it very, very interesting. This is the same pack that was all over the place earlier. Has Matt Martin, Attila Pop Jr., some of these guys that had some issues earlier. It's going to be very, very interesting when these cars catch them, how they're going to pass them, and if they can get by them cleanly.
The side-by-side action we've seen out of these drivers and the aggression, just got to wonder, we're probably about 2 laps away, maybe lap and a half away from seeing Monty Noyes catch these guys, maybe even sooner, depending upon the damage. But drivers here tonight, we have not seen, especially when it comes to the packs, the graciousness, the courteousness that you would typically get. We were talking about earlier with drivers being to the outside. A lot of these drivers are maintaining their line, forcing these lead lap cars to work that outside groove.
Yeah, and I think that plays into a lot of the frustration on the very first lap. I can't imagine how frustrating it could be to run, with a damaged car for 200 laps. That's basically what a lot of these guys have done. I think they're trying to make it interesting for these guys. In some ways, this front pack has really had no issues at all. It's been single file. You're basically running practice laps out here. And now when they're coming up onto this pack, this is going to be the first 2x2 racing I've seen. I will be interested to see if this 5-car pack will, veer to the outside or make it to the inside. If they stay on the inside, Dustin, this could get really interesting for this lead pack on some old tires.
And especially talking about Doug George, Jonah Hart, those guys there with Sean White, maybe even Jonathan Hall in the mix of this. Would that be an opportunity that you think you might have to pull one right around the outside of Monty Noyes and Rob Malone?
Yeah, this will be a time that they could try it. And the thing is as they're approaching this back, some of these guys have to ask themselves, and especially with the 34, how aggressive can I be, and how much aggression can I get away without putting myself in a wrecking position? Right now they're really going to be catching these guys probably in about 2 or 3 laps. They're going to catch this draft, but as they've been working this whole race together, this front pack, I'd have to assume they're just going to all pass on the outside, keep rolling. That would be the best situation for Monty Noyes. But if these guys try to make a move or try to stay on the inside, we haven't seen these guys run the outside yet. We don't know if these guys can, these tires can withstand the outside. So it's going to be interesting. I don't see this pack just veering to the outside for these guys.
And as we take a look, there is your 5-car pack just ahead of your race leader, Monty Noyes. As they head into turn 3, right there is Monty Noyes as well. I mean, they are really close, Mitchell. And how about that little push right there from the 28 of Rob Malone?
Yeah, and that's something that, like we were talking about, he's already starting to push, and these guys have been on their tires for a while. Remember, these guys pitted at lap 100, so they're coming to their fuel window. These tires are very, very old. And, like we talked about, we talked to the drivers a little bit through this week about the tightness that these setups are producing on a long run. If they make them pass on the outside, Dustin, I would not be surprised to see some of these guys go into the wall.
And how about the 2-wide action here with additional lap cars? Really making it interesting in the backstretch now as the 5-car pack that we've been talking about swings by to the outside in the 27 machine, not yielding. So, I mean, again, this is the trend that we've been seeing all night from lap traffic, not yielding. Here they come up on the 24 machine now as they work their way into lap 4, and then is Jonathan Dickert to the high side. And now, oh, how about this? They're going down pit road.
Yeah, I think that was a great move on their part. They knew that it was going to be an issue if they kept staying with them, and I think that might have been possibly the move of the race right now.
So they are going to come down pit road at the number 12 of Monty Noyes, who has led a lot of laps in this race, wanting to salvage as much as possible. And yet again, I think for the third time here tonight, we are seeing a battle here off of pit road. Can George beat Monty Noyes? And this may be their final pit stop of the night.
Yeah, I think they might have one more pit stop in it, but like you said, it's going to be interesting. A very, very big battle.
How about that? As we watched, Monty Noyes coming up third out of that one. I think Malone and George both beat Noyes off of pit road that time around. Kind of an interesting change here in the race. And now we see Doug George in 7th position. Monty Noyes back in 8th. So he's going to be, when all's said and done, looking at third. Joe Hart, one of the things to mention here, some of these drivers elected to stay out. Joe Hart, Jonathan Wall, Brad Miller, Tony Bowling, Mike Ellis amongst the mix of those drivers. Pretty much all the way for 5th. So Rob Malone, one of the few drivers that got down pit road, back in 6th position. This really shakes the lineup a bit.
Yeah, and something else, this might be a developing story here. The 13 has lost that lead pack. It has now become a 4-car race between the top, or excuse me, not the top 4, but the guys that just came off pit road. The 13 has actually dropped behind this pack here, and it looks like the lead pack might actually be catching this pack that just came off pit road here.
So do you think there's a little miscommunication amongst teammates with Sean White being hung up to dry and now looking behind that 25 machine into the max stretch of David, I believe it's Akinney?
Right now, Sean's got to be. That's the problem with sometimes teammates. You become the odd man out, and with 3 teammates, might be what happened. But on the great side, on the bright side of this for the Sean White is he's actually catching with these guys. So maybe he can figure out a way. But something else to be looking at here, Dustin. The pack that has not pitted is back in that same position we were before the last pit stop. They have actually caught the tail end of this pack and the tail end of the people that have already pitted. So if they can do it again, it could get interesting here.
And as we see Jonah Hart now making his way, actually looking to put Sean White 1 lap down. How about that turn of events here on lap 138?
Yeah, this could really shake it up for Sean White. Sean's really got to keep in mind right now, he's got to figure out a way to get back to his teammates, or this could be the end of the race for Sean White.
Take a look at this. Jonathan Wall now does come to the outside. Almost looked like Jonathan Wall had a smug look. He's going to come back down, and boy, he's going to put Jonah Hart up to the high side. How about this? Side by side, Jonah Hart now is going to lose out on that one because here comes the number 10 machine of Brad Miller and the number 17 of Tony Bowling to the inside.
Like we were talking about earlier, Dustin, this is the first time we've seen these guys have a try on the outside. It looked like John had a lift there. It looked like it might have been in the wall. It was probably a good move on his part. But these guys have not worked the outside here. And one thing that's working out very well for the pack that's already pitted, this side-by-side action is just going to help them, just get further and further away, and they need to make as much room with the pack that has not pitted yet as they can possible.
And now Jonathan Wall and company to the high side in turn number 3. making his way to Matt Martin, who will be the number 20 machine to the inside as they come off of turn 4. Oh, and how about that? Matt Martin denying the number 11. Oh, he's going to swing back down now right in front. Whoa, scary times at the start-finish line heading into lap 140.
Yeah, and it looks like we're about to become 3 wide here. I don't think they're going to clear. This could get interesting.
And a dive underneath. Whoa, 3 wide action heading into turn number 2. And wow, Tony Bowling nearly missing Ryan Eckstein up to the high side.
Yeah, that's going to be the issue here. These guys have to figure out a way to clear them as soon as possible. It looks like the 10 and the 11 finally cleared this pack so that maybe they can make a run on the front leaders or the people that have already pitted.
And Bowling electing to stay to the outside here in turn number 4. Hasn't quite cleared the number 4 machine as he works his way into the front stretch, kind of falling back, losing valuable space there now to the outside of the 21 car coming at the start-finish line. And I think he's seeing his pack slip away a little bit, and it's going to be tough for him to catch him at this point here in turn 1.
Yeah, this is a very big time for the 17. The 11 and 10 have pulled away. Those guys still have to pit, but this has really separated this group that still has to pit. So this could really work in favor for Monty Noyes and the gang of George Wood and Malone there in the front pack.
And of course, Matt Martin on the lead lap at the time that Jonathan Wall had passed, and I think that's why we saw a little bit of the aggression out of the 20, trying to slow up the 11, knowing that he was going to go 1 lap down.
Yeah, and we hear the 16 is going to pit here. He's got one person following him here. So now we have 3 more cars that have to pit. That's Brad Miller, Jonathan Wall, and I believe it's going to be the number 17 of Tony Bowling.
So Aaron Waddle making his way down pit road. And as we see a 4-pack battle out there, Monty Noyes, Mac Pratt, Rob Malone, and Doug George working their way down the backstretch. And they are kind of hung out to dry here. Of course, with Malone back in 6th. Mike Ellis has a little 3-pack. He's kind of looking to the inside now here as he comes across the tri-oval to the inside of Vincent. And again, we're taking a look now in the front stretch. Number 11 of Jonathan Wall, 143 laps have almost been complete. It'll be complete at the line next time by 17 laps led from the 11 machine. Brad Miller sticking with him. I think he's found a good draft partner to work with. These 2 guys have found themselves by each other, and now the number 7 machine, they're picking up Tim Phillips here in the backstretch.
Yeah, and something that's just become developing from race control, the 16 and the 26 that just were on pit road, both got pit road speeding penalties. So this really means that that top 4 might have it. That might be the race for the lead, is that top 4. So both of them got speeding penalties. That really is going to hurt the guys that have stayed out.
So Jonah Hart will have to come back down as well as Aaron Waddle, as we're showing you here on the camera. Pit road penalties for speeding. They got to do a quick stop and go down there in their pit boxes. That is just a tough break, especially this late in the race.
And see, now the question is, Brad Miller and Jonathan Wall, they have not caught the front pack like they did earlier. It's close, but it still isn't. Now the 17 is making a run on the 10 here.
Take a look at that. Tony Bowling from nowhere has Sean White behind him. White's going to look to get back on the lead lap this time by, as he is dancing 1 lap down. Now right behind Tony Bowling. He'll be back on the lead. Not quite on the lead lap, as Bowling actually is your race leader. And Tim Phillips, man, this is crazy, Mitchell. Near 3 wide action here in the front stretch on lap 145.
Yeah, this is really showing the power from those teammates. The 13 really has a great car. That really was a power move he made there to basically push the 17 all the way up to him. Oh, we got a door.
Near contact between Phillips and White heading out of turn number 2.
Comes some 3 wide action here.
Oh, and Hart to the high side. Of course, after serving that penalty, as well as Waddle nearly threading the needle, and that has been the team. That team down there with Malone, Noyes, and White threading the needle out of the backstretch. Second time tonight we've seen it from that team, and wow, are they door locked here as White's fighting with Bowling, trying to get back on the lead lap.
Yeah, something that 13 of Sean White needs to keep in mind. The 17 has old tires. He's going to have to push.
Oh, as he turns him. Oh, my, did he just turn Bowling? Wow. Unbelievable in the front stretch. It was not even I don't know, Mitchell. That was a crazy move there. I wonder if he was just trying to get back down. We're going to have to dial back the replay and take a look at that one.
Yeah, that was a crazy move there. You know, there was a lot of frustration from the 13. He got doored there in the turns, and we were just talking about, you know, the 17 was on some old tires, so that was crazy.
And as we show you again the replay, Sean White to the outside of Tony Bowling into the front stretch, and it looks like from this vantage point, White thought he had it cleared, could come back down behind him. Boy, did he just cut him right off, and Tony Bowling just goes spinning helplessly in the front stretch. A driver that was looking really solid late here in the race just saw the race go away from him.
Yeah, that's got to be a heartbreaker. You know, you're 50 laps and you're leading the race, and you get turned by basically a lap car. You know, 13 was very strong, but you know, it looks like he might have moved up just a tad. But like you said, the 13 I think just misjudged it. But man, that's just a tough break for the 17 of Tony Bowling.
We're going to take you back on board here with Sean White amidst all this incident. And we'll take you into turns 3 and 4 and kind of show you the run that he had with Bowling. Bowling to the inside there, as we see. Heading into the front stretch, Sean White to the high side of Tony Bowling as they make their way down. And again, we're on board here. Got to wonder if he got the clear, because right as they cross the start-finish line, you start to see Sean White veer down, I think signaling the fact that he wanted to come back down in the lower groove, and he gets right to that bumper there and may have thought he had Bowling cleared. Did not have Bowling cleared. He's going to go sailing on by. Bowling is going to go up into the wall and take some heavy damage right there in the front stretch.
And I'm going to tell you what, Dustin, Bowling is heated, and he has every right to be. He is, talking about possibly protesting the 13 for that move. Timbers, put on short tracks a lot, but gosh, man, when you've ran so good this long and to get taken out like that, that's just got to really get under your skin.
And of course, heavy damage. Bowling down on pit road. That is going to bring more. Now, we talked about caution flags coming out here on lap 148, and we were talking about earlier, had this thing stayed green all the way to the end, the different strategies. Jonathan Wall still in front of the field, but Monty Noyes now coming down pit road along with Doug George. What does this do as far as the strategy is concerned?
Yeah, right now, this is going to put us at lap 147. They're still going to have to make one more pit stop, so it's going to be a little interesting. It's going to be a 40-lap run, so a short pit could be very inevitable here.
And it looks like Doug George has got the faster pit stop time over Monty Noyes. Right side comes down, left side goes up. He may have about a tenth. Off comes Malone. George is going to beat it. Oh, and what a battle off of pit road as Doug George does beat Monty Noyes right to the line, so he will be ahead of that number 12 machine going back to green.
Yeah, but the thing to think about here, though, is Monty done that as a strategy move, because the 28 he's actually going to be starting behind his teammate now, the 28.
And how about the late development here on the number 11 of Jonathan Wall? I mean, we've seen Bowling out of nowhere. I mean, we were talking, it seemed like 4 laps before we saw Bowling past Wall. We were talking about him missing out on the pack, and he was kind of running with that other pack, and just out of nowhere he got this run. It was really amazing to see that 17 get the run that he had and take over the race lead. Just unfortunate to see the incident there with the 13 of Sean White.
Yeah, this is really going to have to really play the hand of these 3 teammates. This is the first time they haven't been on the front row most of this race. Now the good question is how aggressive are they going to be to take this lead back? Jonathan Wall has not been in the lead. Brad Miller has not been in the lead. It's going to be interesting to see how aggressive they want to be. They're going to be starting nose to tail the 28 and Monty Noyes, but they're not going to be in the lead. So, there's a lot of strength there. Sean White showed it very easily. He was making moves there on the outside before he unfortunately turned the 17, but they're not on the front row now, so this could get pretty interesting here.
Of course, we saw Ryan Eckstein, one of the drivers not here tonight, and that number 2 machine really sticking with it, and a testament, talking about early on being the first race of this NIS series, sticking it out, trying to get some points, currently running 15th. I mean, you talked about being wrecked on the first lap and not having the one with a damaged vehicle to go the distance. And with that number 2 car, I mean, as much damage as he's got on that machine, it's just amazing to see him stick it out and really work with it. I mean, even when we take a look at the wall cameras, Mitchell, talking about the triple degree temperatures, I mean, you can see the heat waves down there on the track as these cars come off of turn 2.
Yeah, and talking about Ryan Eckstein now, he's moved up to 15th place with 24 laps down. Now Tony Bowling has bowed out of the race. Ryan Eckstein's going to come back to finish possibly P14 in this race. That might be probably the comeback driver of this race so far.
Pretty much hard charging without having to hard charge in this Daytona 500.
I tell you what, Dustin, we're going to be coming to about 50 to go with this next restart, and I really think we know who the strong cars are. It's going to be the three teammates of Malone, Noyes, and White. But I really said earlier the dark horse of this race might be the 11 of Jonathan Wall. You know, we haven't seen him up front. We don't know what he's really got, but you know, there's a lot of strength in these cars. You can go back to the qualifying times and just see the difference. I mean, Doug George was P2, and Monty Noyes had almost 300s on the second place car, so it could be interesting to see how this all plays out.
And it looks like they're going to get the wave arounds from the lap down traffic as they go around the pace car in the front stretch. Here on lap 50, it'll be 50 to go when we get the green flag. Jonathan Wall, Brad Miller, Rob Malone, Doug George, Monty Noyes, your top five, heading back into this green flag and back to the racing. And again, folks, do thank you for tuning out to the Digital Forge Broadcasting Network this Wednesday night to capture our coverage of the NIS Daytona 500 here at Daytona International Speedway. Plenty of NIS races to come up. Me and Mitchell will look to cover as many as we can this season for you. And you know, a lot of the drivers out there appreciate, especially we can't talk enough about the effort from these drivers putting in, trying to accumulate points in this national series.
Yeah, and right now, you know, really and truly, this, although we've seen the strength of these three teammates in this race, next week I think we go to Atlanta, or the next race we'll be covering is Atlanta or Las Vegas. So, you know, by each track it's going to change, but you know, right now I really think that coming here to 50 to go, we're going to have a fun finish here to the end.
Definitely looking forward to seeing how it'll play out. It is all hands on deck now as we're set to go back green with 50 to go. Wall behind the pace car in turn 4, now looking to the front stretch. The Mustang iRacing pace car will be into the pits, this time by as he leads them out of turn number 4. Here we go. Making her way down towards that trioval, the flagman ready to give the signal. As they work their way, pace car dives into the pits. Flagman gives the green flag. We're back to the race here at the Daytona 500 with 50 to go. And here they come into the front stretch. What a battle up front. I think they are starting to hit the final 50 laps of this race where they need to turn it up. Doug George back in third behind Rob Malone. And looking back behind Brad Miller, Mike Ellis now in the top 5 again. Monty Noyes. Monty Noyes is about the deep end of the field as he's been all night, back in 6th position. And he looks like he's losing a little bit off the pace there behind Ellis.
Yeah, that was a very interesting restart. The 31 of Mike Ellis made a really aggressive move there to the inside. But the most developing story off that restart was the 13. Looked like the 13 might have had some issues going from 3rd to 4th gear and really checked up a lot, put him in this backfield. This is the most we've seen the Three Musketeers separated this whole entire race, which I'm talking about Malone, Noyes, and White. So if these guys are all separated, this might be what we thought the favorite possibly could be. George could be playing out in his favor, but Jonathan Wall is looking pretty strong in first.
And it looks like now Sean White working with the number 20 of Martin there into turn number 1. How about Jonah Hart and Waddle there? I think pit road buddies there last time as they had seen penalties, and now they are working together as they go by the number 14 of Pratt.
Yeah, that was, in a way, probably the best thing that could have happened for the 26. They got put a lap down. There still are a lap down, except for actually, yes, they are all still lap down. So we'll see what happens here. You know, it could be very interesting to see. I see the 13 being very aggressive. I could see him, he's trying to push people, but the problem is he's got to take into play the bumper hook here in the turns. But he's going to have to figure out a way to try to get back to this lead pack.
As he now looks to make his way up towards the 14 of Pratt. Pratt looking to get up to the 16 of Waddle. Waddle looking to move up now to the 26 of Hart as they go through turn number 2, trying to form a little draft line. Jumping back up to the race lead here, the number 11 of Jonathan Wall down the backstretch towards turn number 3 here on lap 154. The number 28 of Malone back behind him. They kind of pulled away a little bit, doing a little bit of bump draft, getting away from Doug George. And you got to wonder, I know Noyes is back there in 6th position, but I think Malone senses something from this 34 car, trying to pull away just a little bit and keep that 34 car at bay, because now here comes the 34 of Doug George.
Yeah, this is going to be a very interesting run to the end here. This is a lot of guys we haven't seen up in the front, or now have really changed positions. Malone doesn't have his teammate right behind him. He's got him about 3 cars back, and with this draft package, it's not like the 12 can just surge up on him. The 31 of Mike Ellis, another guy that we've seen been all around the board tonight. He's had damage all night, lost the lead pack, but the cautions have just kept falling his way. He's actually with his Tafasi teammate, Brad Miller, in front of him, so that might be another developing story if those guys can work together.
And as they work their way into the front stretch towards lap 156, they are winding down. And again, another pit strategy still in the works here at Daytona for these drivers. They were able to get down with the last caution as we bring up the race summary and show you here, folks. Jonathan Wall, of course, 28 laps led here for the Daytona 500, 155 laps complete. We got 11 lead changes here tonight, of course, because of the pit stops. 4 total cautions, and one of them we know we could have done away with, but how pivotal has those other 3 been for these drivers looking to gain some positions?
Well, these cautions have really fallen pretty good for a couple of these drivers. Like we said, Mike Ellis would have had no chance to be in this race, and for him to have a damaged car and be running P5 is pretty amazing in itself. Really and truly, the top 4, the 4 guys that I've been really watching tonight has been the 3 Musketeer teammates of Malone, Noyes, and White, and then George. George has been really probably having the best average position this whole race. We really haven't seen George much further than about 7th place this whole night. I think he's got a lot more in the bag, but something that I'm going to be really interested to see is if the 10 and the 31 Tafasi teammates can stick together, can they make a run with the 34 on the outside?
And if you are Jonathan Wall and Doug George, do you dump that 28 car in between you and try to work together? As now we're seeing a little sway there from Malone heading out for turn 4 into the front stretch. Because if you're anticipating the 10 and the 31 to work together, you think that they just want to stiff the 28 and work together as well? Or you think the 28 and the 11 has a chance to work together to edge out that 34 car?
Well, I think right now what they got to keep in mind is that here you have to start making your move with about 1 to go. If you wait till out of turn 4 to make your move in these cars, it's very, very unlikely you're going to be able to make that pass. If the 34 can figure out a way to get under the 28, that may work. But something else that we're starting to see here, Dustin, we actually have some people catching this lead pack.
Yeah, Jonah Hart back there with Aaron Waddle, the 14 of Pratt, and the 13 of White now catching up. And, of course, Hart back in 10th position, 1 lap down. These are lap cars back behind the 12 of Monty Noyes coming across the start-finish line into lap 159. And this is going to shake things up just a little bit as Jonah Hart looking pretty aggressive towards the back of Monty Noyes' bumper. Not looking like he wants to go to the outside, but more or less just wants to stick with this pack. Aaron Waddle, though, however, thought that Jonah Hart may have wanted to go to the outside and is now going to lose out the top side back behind Sean White. And now we see Jonah Hart look to the outside.
Well, Jonah Hart needs to keep in mind that all he's got to do to get that lucky dog is stay in front of the 20 of Matt Martin. He's up in the front pack. The 20 of Matt Martin's actually in that second pack, but he's also got to have a caution. Right now with this whole field being back and Sean White actually being back in this field, I'm starting to really see that Sean White's got probably one of the fastest cars in this group. He was behind that whole pack, and he basically, kept pushing that field up, and he brought them all back up to the front.
And keep a look at the 16 of Aaron Waddle to the outside of Sean White. Boy, is he in the danger zone there. A nice little sway. Could end the night for that 13 machine. And the 13 definitely a saving grace, as Waddle now is going to get the side draft here off of Pratt. But the 13 of Sean White going to be the saving grace for Monty Noise and getting them back up to the front.
Yeah, and this is what we were talking about earlier, the side draft. The 16 is really hard, really side drafted, very hard.
Oh, White! White right off the side of Hart. Good night to the third Musketeer. Sean White thought that he had him cleared. Another car that 13 machine has come into contact tonight. And looking at that damage, Mitchell, I think it's over for that 13 of Sean White.
Well, I hate to say it, but what goes around comes around. That time, it was, once again, on the 13. He just completely moved up right on him. Don't know what his plan of action there was. Don't know if he was just looking down at his phone or what, but he turned straight into John Hart. Ended up ending the 13's night, but, you know, maybe he and Tony Bowling can have a little conversation in the garage before they hit the helicopter.
Almost like a Kurt Busch, Jimmy Spence moment, I'm sure, for the 13 of White and Bowling if they meet back in the pits. But again, we're going to dial this one back, go on board again, and watch the contact between Sean White and Jonah Hart. Jonah Hart was able to escape with minimal damage out of that, considering the fact that the 13 came up into him. And here we are right here as in the backstretch heading towards turn 3, following Sean White behind Pratt. And again, as they head in, you're going to see Sean White come up, Waddle just ahead, side by side with Pratt. We're going to slow the camera up right here. Coming out of turn 4, I'm not sure that he saw Jonah Hart or if he just anticipated the outside to have the momentum and swing by and he was going to try to catch some rear draft off of Hart. But Hart definitely escaping this one as Sean White, a head-on collision with that inside wall, heavy damage, pretty much ending his night.
Yeah, really trying to figure out what Sean's plan of action there was. You know, they still had pretty new tires, so I don't think he got tight. I just I don't know what he was trying to do there. We haven't heard anything on the radio about what his plan of action was. We didn't hear anything on the radio when he turned to 17 either. So maybe he knows he's at fault. Maybe he doesn't know what to do. But like we were talking about, that side draft definitely played a factor in that wreck probably.
And Aaron Waddle now to the outside of Pratt in turn number 4, really kind of in that danger zone, looking to come back down. Oh my, is he really? Wrong turn there from the 16 machine, ends up into the quarter panel there of Pratt, and both of them have a chance to see the pit road for the time that they don't want to see it. Now into lap 164, and of course, the incident that we just witnessed between White and Hart, not bringing out the caution flag. Of course, Hart's going to lose out on that one, as well as he's going to go down. And what a turn of events. I mean, and a night that we've seen early on here at Daytona, get the field cut in half. Who would have thought we'd still see this much drama this late in the race?
Well, that's just what Daytona brings to the table here, Dustin. And, you know, something else we can start talking about. We are in our pit window for our last pit stop. So some of these guys might duck in early and go ahead and get that pit stop out of the way and make a run to the end. But as crazy as this race has been, I think everybody's banking on another caution.
And if we don't see that caution, let's talk theory here. We don't see the caution. This thing continues to run under the green. And boy, is Waddle, I'm looking back here at Waddle, and he is really working that side draft off the side of the 14 of Pratt now, trying to get up towards Noise. But we talk theory here. Always love to talk theory about strategy. You are Rob Malone back behind Jonathan Wall. Do you pit when Wall pits, or do you try to pull Noise back from behind 4 cars deep and make another run together in hopes that you're going to catch 2 more of these cars, maybe Miller and Ellis with you?
Well, now that we lost one of the 3 Musketeers, we have Tafasi Racing versus the other 2 Musketeers. So there's 2 teammates and 2 teammates. I really think whoever has George in his group, he is gonna be the one kind of going. We're gonna be 3 wide here though, coming out of turn 2.
Waddle really in a position of fear here as now Eckstein to the high side, and again Eckstein can't get enough credit to that guy out there really trucking around this track in P16. And again, maybe we're going to see him edge out and again looking for a P15, P14 finish potentially here tonight as Bowling, again, 14th position, has bowed out of the race. 18 laps down. You got about 7 laps in between the 2 of them. And now into lap 167, starting again to talk about pit strategy. as they come up too wide in turn 1.
Yeah, and right now the 16's finally starting to have to back off, but we might be 3 wide here at a turn 2 with the 14 and the 16. This could get a little interesting here.
This could be the caution that they're looking for. And Noyes, wow, did he just wipe the nose of that lap car. Comes back down into the low groove. I think he was trying to gain something off of Ellis, or really just make sure he maintained the draft right there, the rear draft off of Mike Ellis. And if you take a look at that 31, he's got a little bit of damage there on the back bumper of that car.
Yeah, and that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. If somebody tries to push Mike Ellis, that the roughed up back bumper could enable some bumper hook there, and that could be race ending for Mike Ellis and whoever pushes him. But right now it's really hard to tell what's going to be the strategy on everybody's mind here. There's a lot of different strategies they could play out. Ooh, the 16 got really close to Ryan, but right now everybody's just trying to get to the end here. I think we're going to have a good finish here.
I tell you got to give Aaron Waddle heart right there, the number 16 machine, really working that outside groove and causing some scary moments. And I think if we do see a caution, he's going to come back conservative in turn 4 and come back down in. I mean, running that outside groove, you got to wonder how long he was going to stay out there, not really getting anything working. He's a few laps down here heading into lap 169. But now Malone still behind Wall. Wall has led a total of 41 laps here at Daytona.
Yeah, right now, this is the most Wall's been up front. And I really think we're starting to see that, the 16, he's laps down, but he's willing to go for it. And the question is when is go time for some of these guys? We're going up to 30 laps to go. These guys still have a pit stop to make too. So I think that when after the pit stops, if we go green the rest of this race, this pit stop could make or break your Daytona 500.
Take a look back in 6th position, the number 12 of Monty Noyes, the poise out of that machine just to hold in there after leading a total of 115 laps. As we continue to watch the 16 of Waddle up to the high side of Pratt, but watching the number 12 of Monty Noyes, he doesn't seem too concerned about going to the front just yet. I think that you feel that his aggression is going to come after that final pit stop.
Yeah, I think everybody still knows in the back of their mind they have a pit stop. It's been a trend tonight that at least 1 or 2 cars have been dwindled out of the front pack after that pit stop. So it probably will happen again, and that will determine who's going to be in the running to win this Daytona 500.
As we watch the drivers off of turn 4 here on lap 170, it'll be 30 to go at the line. Jonathan Wall still up front. Number 28 of Malone. Here comes George. Boy, George has got a run, picking up some rear draft off that 28 of Malone.
Yeah, going back in the field here a little bit, Matt Martin's been in battles all night long. It looks like he's in another one with the 1 of Jeremy Vincent and the 7 of Tim Phillips.
Watching Phillips coming across the start-finish line, and whoa, does the number 4 of Pep look really close to Vincent, and they nearly had contact at the start-finish line. And a little bit of push there out of Martin into turn 1. Definitely up on the high side, a concerning point there this late in the race with the age of those tires on the car. And whoa, does Martin go up? Wow, back up and back down in front of the number 1 of Vincent. I think Vincent knew he had the run and probably, did you happen to hear anything on the race control from them telling Martin to go back down into the lower groove?
Yeah, he didn't know. He's talking about he did not know there was people behind him. But right now, if we're going to have a caution, it's probably going to come out of this group. And now they're coming 2 by 2 on 2 other cars. This could be our caution here, Dustin.
And as we keep the cameras on it, following these guys, a very aggressive pack here on lap 172. And now the bottom line having to slow up for lap traffic. Do they try to push a 3-wide scenario here out of turn 2? They're going to have more room in the backstretch as the apron will open up. Here comes Phillips to the inside of the 27, 3-wide action. Martin's going to follow by, and it looks like the high side of Jono Hart was able to get by him right there as the 3-wide action potentially developed in the backstretch, but now clears up here in turns 3 and 4.
Yeah, Keith was really yelling on the mic to make sure he checks up. I think he was just trying to, get through that without getting wrecked, and the conservative move looked like it really paid off. Unfortunately, they lost the battle there to the outside. But in grand scheme of things, they're really not battling anybody in that front pack. Everybody in front of them there just really isn't there. And I tell you what, the 12 of Monty Noyes is getting on the 16. He is so tired of that side draft. He is just yelling at him right now.
I bet Aaron Waddle, it's one of the things we've been watching here tonight. the necessity of a driver nearly touching Mike Ellis in the front stretch. But the necessity to run that outside line, I mean, what is this gain here for a driver on the outside? Is there anything to be had? Is it more of a mental challenge here of Aaron Waddle to work on these other drivers? Is he setting up for something late in the race, possibly after a pit stop, or is it just sheer, I don't want to say the S word, the lack of mental knowledge here, but he now falls back here behind Pratt in the backstretch.
I think he's just trying to have fun. I mean, he's 42 laps down, and I am shocked that he is actually able to have that kind of strength to move on the outside. But with 42 laps down, he's really working hard. But I think he's finally, everybody's been barking at him. I think he's starting to calm down. But this is still going to be interesting coming here to the end.
Kind of the theme we've seen here tonight with Shaun White getting into Tony Bowling earlier. Lap traffic, it definitely could cause a little bit of issues, and that's the last thing that these guys up here who have survived so many cautions here tonight, who have put the time, the effort in, do not want to have happen to them here with about 25 to go in the Daytona 500.
Yeah, this is going to start being interesting. I'm watching the second pack here. They're really running. They've kind of separated here a little bit. I don't know if they're going to have a caution here. The main pack to be watching here is definitely going to be the lead pack. They're going to probably be able to make it to about lap 185 to 195 on fuel. If they decide to short pit, though, the other question is, with it being this close, do you take tires? And we haven't seen anybody try to get off pit road with no tires. You're talking about 800 horsepower that you're trying to plant to the ground on 40 lap old tires or more. That could be very interesting trying to come off pit road.
So let's put yourself in this scenario. Always love to throw you in the driver's seat. If you're one of these drivers out here in the top 8 on the lead lap, and you had a teammate out there, let's say Malone and Noyes, or even Ellis and Miller, what do you do?
You got to take, in this position, right now, you've been up there the whole race. There's 8 cars up in the front. It's all about, you can take 2 left sides and maybe get away with it without having a caution. But, on the grand scheme of things, fuel only is going to be about 3 seconds. So we've seen where tires can matter here. I don't think 4 tires is going to be the move, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to take 2. But you can get a little bit on the wild side, take no tires, just fuel, and you could have the race won if 2 or 3 people decide to follow that strategy.
In your experience, though, in this scenario, would you personally go for 4 tires?
Not in this situation. 4 tires is going to be about a 14-second pit stop. Left side is going to take about 5 seconds. Fuel only is 3. 2 seconds off pit road, I don't see that being enough, because with you having the old tires on more fuel, it's going to get loose off pit road. So you taking 2 tires could get you around the apron just a little bit quicker, but also, it's going to give you the run. I would, if it were me, I'd probably have to take either 2 lefts or 2 rights and just hope that people follow that strategy and go for it.
And of course, we see Waddle now working his way back up to the side of Pratt yet again. Look on back through the field, and now here he comes back up to the side of Noyes yet again, causing a little havoc there on the field to the outside, but it does look like he's holding it pretty solid, considering the fact, as you mentioned earlier, being about 42 laps down.
Yeah, this is going to start becoming interesting. Everybody's getting, all the lap cars are talking about pitting right now. The question is when is the leaders actually going to pit?
As we're getting close to about the 20 lap to go mark, we got about 21 remaining. 21, 22 remaining and counting. As we follow the number 11 of Jonathan Wall. 51 laps led for this car tonight, second most led in this race. As Monty Noyes back in 6th, the number 12 has led 115.
Yeah, right now they're a little bit separated. We should be seeing pit stops here probably in the next 10 to 12 laps.
Of course, a little bit of lap traffic coming up. And the question here, I would keep an eye on the 28 of Malone and the 12 of Noyes. I believe they might be working something out. I would anticipate that they want to make sure that they are, side by side or at least bump drafting each other towards the end of this one, knowing the fact that they got Ellis and Miller. And the question is, do they even know Ellis and Miller are teammates at this point? Because, I mean, if you look at it, Mitchell, Ellis and Miller haven't really been working together as teammates would. They almost look like they're running individual.
Yeah, this is going to be very, very interesting. Right now it's going to be interesting.
And nobody electing to come down pit road, and a little bit of issues there with Mike Ellis in the front stretch, causing a little concern there, I'm sure, to the number 12 of Monty Noyes and number 14 of Mac Pratt. We are now soon to be at the 20 to go mark at the line.
Yeah, they all pitted about lap 135, so it's going to show they're going to have to pit anywhere from about lap 183 to about 190. The 16 of Aaron Waddle is talking about pitting right now, so it looks like 16 may try to pit here. We'll see what he does as he tries to go to the outside.
If you're Mac Pratt, you're probably thankful that the number 16 decides to head down pit road.
Oh, he decided to do a fake. He definitely called it out there, but decided to keep going.
Of course, being 42 laps down, what do you fake at this point, though?
Right now, I have to give the advantage to George and Brad Miller and Mike Ellis because they're the guys that are in the middle, probably the two fastest guys still out on the track. Jonathan Wall, he has been really leading this race with no problems. I think everybody's been very content with running behind him, except for the 16, obviously. But, it's going to be hard to decide who's really going to win this race until these pit stops. This pit stop is going to win this race, how they decide to do them.
Lordy, as we look back, again, X9 to the high side, and the tension moment there, I'm sure for Monty Noyes to the inside of the 16 machine, who just made it 3 wide out of turn 4. Of course, more issues there with Mike Ellis out of turn number 2. Gotta wonder how much more that's going to develop as this race progresses here, getting closer and closer to the end of this Daytona 500. And now, especially with the issues we're seeing here, and to have the number 16 of Waddle to the outside, I tell you what, it's creating tension that you can almost cut with a knife, Mitchell.
Yeah, and right now, it's looking. Oh,
here comes
like
George.
Oh no!
Oh, what a wow! And contact between Waddle and Noyes. George to the apron. Oh, and what happened there, Mac Pratt? Mac Pratt.
Wow.
And I can tell you right now, if you're Mac Pratt, there's a few choice words that you're going to have for that number 16 machine.
Well, really and truly, that was probably going to be on the 34. 34's already called it was his incident, but I can't blame the 12 and I can't blame the 14 for having to move up. You had no idea where the 34 was going, and it kind of just put him in a situation where you didn't know what to do, and it's very confusing what the 34 was trying to pull there. So,
as we show you the replay, you see Doug George look to the apron as if he's going down pit road, comes back up underneath the yellow line as Mike Ellis was right there. Track and apron running out here into the tri-oval. Of course, Monty Noyes goes up towards Aaron Waddle to avoid it and give room to the 34 to come back. They make contact, and of course, Mac Pratt is going to receive the resulting sparks that come off the 16, and a little bit of looseness there from Doug George. And boy, does right here we see Aaron Waddle come right back into Pratt, turning the 14 machine right up into the safer barrier, and around goes Pratt and ends his night here at the Daytona 500.
Yeah, listening to the in-car radio, the 34, we were talking about the pit strategy. He thought that the front two guys were trying to pit there, and when he realized they were staying out, he tried to recover from that. But, in all telltale of things, the 16, being 42 laps down, probably wasn't in the best position there to take out a lead lap car with 20 to go. That's definitely got to be a heartbreak for the 14.
Seen a few of those here tonight, even on the first lap of this race. Yeah. Drama continuing to unfold here at Daytona. And now, definitely the caution coming out, much needed caution, give an opportunity for a lot of these cars to come down pit road. Yeah,
it's going to be, this is going to be definitely everybody's going to take, go in there and take, I would definitely now, with it being under caution, it'd be crazy not to take 4 tires here. Depending where Monty Noyes and Malone come out will probably decide how this race is going to play out. They are the strong cars, but this pit stop is going to possibly win the race for somebody.
And as we follow Wall, looks like everybody behind him signaling. Wall is going to stay out this time around. Malone, no, they're going to come down. Here comes Wall and company, bringing the lead lap cars down pit road. As they come through to their pit boxes. See the pit exit cam and then watch the battle here. Malone gets to his pit box first. George slows up, and it is Noise that gets to his pit box last. Let's see what happens here off. Here goes Malone.
He took 2.
Malone took 2. Wow. George takes 2. Wow, this is going to be interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, this late in the race. Wow.
Very, very surprised with the 2-tire stop. With there not being many cars, I think it would have been the best move to take 4. But, like we talked about earlier, the 3 Musketeers -1 now are back on the lead, back going to be in the lead, both starting on the front row here. They have been the strong cars tonight. That might be the move of the race now.
We'll have to say how that'll play out, folks. We are going to take a short commercial break under this yellow before we show you the final race action tonight. We thank you again for tuning in. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, here to our coverage on the Digital Forge Broadcasting Network of the NIS Daytona 500. I'm Dustin Caldwell, joined with Mitchell Reeves this Wednesday night as the Mustang iRacing pace car gets to the start-finish line. We should see some wave-around action here as the cars get on the throttle to get back a lap, getting the wave around that pace car as we look to go back green on lap 189. Folks, if you are just tuning in, what a dramatic race we've seen, starting from the first lap here tonight. First caution flag coming out right here in turns 1 and 2, a little bumper hook action, taking out half the field, but that didn't stop the drama. We had some guys get up front, lead lap cars getting turned by lap traffic, and it's close to coming down to this right here. Rob Malone will take us back to the green. Brad Miller will be to the outside. Doug George, Jonathan Wall, your front four. Mike Ellis in the mix now as well. And Monty Noise, the question here, Mitchell, back in 7th position. Did you happen to hear anything about any possible penalties or that driver now causing him to be back in 7th position?
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out myself listening to the driver chat. He went back in on pit road after the time he went in. Don't know if he may have just forgotten to take fuel or what. I was very shocked by that move, but with that happening now, that's really going to open it up. Gosh, I was really surprised by that move. We know he's got the car to get back up there, but he's going to be coming to about 12 laps to go to make that move. And remember, Dustin, with 5 laps to go, if there's a caution, it's over. So these guys really and truly need to make their move here in about the next 6 laps to guarantee that they're going to have a chance at this.
Well, the pace car looks to go into the pits this time and we will get the green flag as the flagman ready to give the signal. Here we go. The Mustang iRacing pace car into the pits. Green flag flies. We are back to the race. And as they come across the start-finish line into lap 190, Malone has got the lead, but look who's behind him, Mitchell. It's the 34 of Doug George.
Yeah, and Monty Nose actually went back into pit road, so now it is the Three Musketeers -2. Something else that I've been watching here, Mike Ellis is leading Brad Miller. These are teammates. We have not seen anybody push Mike Ellis yet with that rear damage. But, man, he's going to have to make something happen here. I think right now George might be in the best position he's been in all night.
Monty Noise back down on pit road has pretty much made a 3-teammate battle down to one final, the 28 of Rob Malone.
Right now, it's looking like Mike might be trying to back up to the 10 here. This looks like it's going to be a 5-car battle here. Hopefully we'll keep it green, but, man, George has been just nicking at the bit. He has been up there the whole night. I don't even know if he's led a lap yet, but, man, he is looking really strong right now.
For a driver who started second, has been as deep as 7, up pretty much in the top 5 all night. You gotta wonder, here with 10 laps to go, when does he make his move?
Well, right now, you've got to make your move soon. You know, right now, he's got to start thinking, and he probably doesn't know that these are 2 teammates behind him, but the best move that these 4 can do is all go on the outside of the 28. Right now, you know, George looks very content keeping a gap between him and Mike. Don't know if Mike actually has the car to get around on that outside with that damage, though.
Yeah, the bumper there, a little concave action on the back of the 31 of Mike Ellis. Brad Miller back behind him. We're talking about Jonathan Wall currently running in the top 5. Wall tonight led a total of 58 laps. Possibly still in this one. And again, Mitchell, I bring you back to the days of Southeast Motorsports. You've been as deep as 6 cars here, similar to this situation, and we've watched you come all the way through that field and really contend. And now looks like he's going to get a little help possibly from Brad Miller.
Yeah, right now it looks like Wall's trying to set it up. You know, the 34 looks like he's trying to push on Malone a little bit. I think what Malone's got to do being in the lead here, he's got to keep an eye on the 34. If he sees him back up to Mike Ellis, he needs to back up with him, because if they give Malone a huge lead, they're going to get a run on him, and Malone's going to be a sitting duck unless he tries to make a crazy block.
And of course, here with 8 to go, 5 of the cars you see here are just a majority of the total 7 cars that are on the lead lap. Tim Phillips, and surprisingly, the number 12 of Monty Noise. Monty Noise tonight leading 115 laps. Gotta wonder, would love to know the breakdown in communication on that number 12 team to cause him come down pit road yet again.
Yeah, it had to have been a pit road speeding penalty or some kind, or something else that we've seen a lot of. He might have actually gotten a passing under the yellow when somebody did not catch up to him. He did not have a choice but to pit. That might have taken him out of the race. But, one thing else we can see is if he gets back to this front field, he could help his teammate to the lead. And it looks like Monty Noise is actually in front of Rob Malone right now. So that may be a big help for Rob Malone to win this race.
Does Malone keep the 12 in front of him, or does he allow him to go by? I mean, as we're going to see here in 3, it looks like he's going to go by to the inside. Noyes is going to stay up to the high side. Does he come down in front of Ellis? Not quite. He's going to stay up there, let all these lead lap cars back by, and boy, George is really on the bumper of Malone.
Yeah, and it looks like Brad Miller's starting to give a shove to Mike Ellis. Mike Ellis might be making a move to the outside here.
And with 6 laps to go, we talk about the threshold point with 5 remaining. 3 wide action in the front stretch. The 13 of none other than Sean White, driver who's been involved in a couple of accidents here with lead lap traffic. Wow, was that a crazy moment there in turn 1.
Yeah, and Mike Ellis, this is the first time we've seen Mike really try to make a move for the lead. If Rob sees the run, does he block or does he just try to stay on the bottom? And we also got to look out for the bumper hook here. We've seen Mike have some internet issues, and he's got a bad bumper. Those are 2 telltale signs of an easy bumper hook as the 11 goes under the 10.
And as we watch now, the 34 of George really getting on the bumper, trying to give a push to Malone. In the front stretch, it's going to be 5 laps to go. The point of no return is upon us here at the Daytona 500. Now comes the 11 of Jonathan Wall. He's going to look possibly go up to the high side, or is he going to hook up with the 34? What moves will they make here, ladies and gentlemen? Into turn number 1 with 5 laps to go. The tension, the tension in the air is so thick. Now comes lap traffic. Ryan Eckstein to the high side. Mitchell, this is where it all happens.
Yeah, and right there, I think we just saw Mike Ellis does not have the car to make the move on the outside. He had a great run, and it just absolutely stalled. I believe it was from that damage. I think we got a 3-car race here. The 10's backing off. I don't know. 34 is really going to keep into consideration here. If he stays on the bumper and he doesn't let somebody get to him, he's going to be finishing P2 tonight. He's going to have to make his move here soon.
And with 4 to go, Doug George looking like he's going to make a move on Rob Malone. The question is, when will he make that move? If this thing finishes under green, I can only imagine. I'm anticipating to see the 11 of Wall now out of turn number 2. Here comes Jonathan Wall. He's got some room. He's closing the gap in the backstretch.
Yeah, Jonathan Wall looks very, very strong right now. He's making a move. Here comes the 34.
Wow, what a move to pick up that momentum. And you got to look at the back bumper there of George. No increased contact, but Mike Ellis now to the inside. Oh my, this is a 4-car battle for 2 positions, ladies and gentlemen. Into the front stretch, George side by side with Malone with 3 to go. Malone edges him out at the line, so George will not have a lap led this time by, and they begin to turn it up here at Daytona.
Yeah, Wall's on him right now. This is going to be the run right here. Wall is right on the 34's bumper. He comes off, but 34 is actually starting to make some moves here. This might clear him out of 2.
And into the backstretch, he's getting up to the wall, kind of away from the draft. It's going to be 3 wide, not quite. Does Wall, he really bump hooks. The 34 staying on it with them into turn number 3.
This is what 34 has been wanting all night. He's been waiting around. We're going to be coming to 2 to go, and he's finally leading the lap. But Jonathan Wall's been very strong, and don't count out Malone.
And now we're starting to see Miller join the action, but Wall getting eager. He really gets on the bumper there of George. As they come across the start-finish line, it's going to be the white flag in the air, and Wall really putting the bumper, the aggression into turn 1 with 2 to go. You got to wonder here about Doug George. George really turning it up. Can he hold off the 11 of Jonathan Wall?
Yeah, one thing that Wall's got to be careful of here. Every time George sees that run, he's going to take him, but they're clearing Malone. This could be between Wall and Hunter here at the end.
And Malone has really fallen off the pace. I don't know if he's trying to pick up Ellis for a little bit of bump draft, knowing that he's fallen off behind Miller. But ladies and gentlemen, the NIS Daytona 500 now sees the white flag. All cautions are off. We've got 1 lap to go, no holds barred. Doug George leads them into turn number 1.
Yeah, and John Wall looks like he's trying to back up to Brad. And I know the 34 is looking. The Wall is going to try to make a move. Watch for the crossover here out of 2. He might move up high and then try to cut back low. But it looks like 34 might just keep it on the bottom.
And Doug George sniffing out that little crossover maneuver you were talking about, Mitchell. Out of turn number 2, and here we go into turn number 3. Just a turn and a half, a little bit of tri-oval, and a lot of distance for these drivers, it seems. White flag in the air. Coming to the checkered flag. Jonathan Wall's going to try something on the outside. To the inside, to there they come. They're going to be side by side, but Doug George takes the Daytona 500 in the NASCAR iRacing Series opener this Wednesday night.
What a race. Doug was very, very, very strong the whole entire time. That was a great race for Doug. He stayed in the front, didn't lead a lot of laps, but he led the laps that counted.
And definitely a very patient race for the number 34 of Doug George. Amazingly sticking with these drivers. Again, ran up in the top 5 all night, was deep as 7. Led 3 laps, as you pointed out, Mitchell. The most crucial 3 of this race.
Yeah, I am, to watch. We watched Doug George the whole entire night, and we thought it was going to be him versus the 3 Musketeers. And after the 2 of them went away, it just didn't look like Malone had the run, and it just worked out perfect. But definitely a great driving job by Doug George. And hard chargers got to go to Mike Ellis. He had, he's been dealing with damage since the whole race. Needed the cautions to find the right way, and they finally fell the right way. But man, for there to be about 10 cars in the lead pack the whole race, what a whole bunch of drama, and what a great finish.
And definitely talking about miscommunications here tonight. How about the number 12 team of Monty Noise, a driver that looked very dominant here tonight, scoring the pole position. Had Doug George to the outside. Monty Noise leading 115 laps at this Daytona 500 race. And that late in the race, to have that kind of communication breakdown really cost him here in Daytona. Yeah,
I really would hate to say it, but Monty might have cost his team a win in this race. Him and Malone really worked well together that whole race. And man, you got to give a huge shout out to everybody that really stayed in this race and played it out. Just looking down the list right now, Ryan Eckstein, 41 laps down, finished 15th. I mean, that's just being just keep commitment and all that. But man, just what a great way to start out this NIS Open Series.
Excellent job done here tonight for the drivers who really stuck it out as we look to bring the results up on the screen for you folks. The Daytona 500 coming to a close. What a journey it has been here tonight. The 34 of Doug George taking victory, and what a battle with the number 11 of Jonathan Wall, a driver tonight who had led 58 laps of this race. Rob Malone back there as well. Rob Malone led 12 laps, and Brad Miller back behind him there. Mike Ellis, and again, talking about Mike Ellis being the hard charger here at the Daytona 500, will finish 5th. Tim Phillips, Monty Noise, the dominant driver here tonight, the number 12, leading 115 laps of this race, will finish 7th. Matt Martin doing an excellent job to finish up in 8th. Jonah Hart, unfortunately, after the speeding road penalty, will finish in 9th, or pit road speeding penalty. And running out the top 10 here is Attila Papp Jr., and a heck of a job out of the number 4 Haas machine to stick with it. Looking on back, Mitchell, we'll go ahead and let you take on the 11 through 20 here.
Yeah, Joe Cabin came up 27th. 14 to Matt Pratt, had a heartbreaker there, getting in with that lap car. And then you got Daniel B. Johnson, didn't hear much from him. And then the wild man of the night was Sean White, just kept getting in stuff and ended up costing their big at the end. Ryan Eckstein, Jeremy Vincent, Robert Roche, a lot of these guys got taken out very early in the race, 40 laps down. David Ankney, Alex Montanelli, Tony Bowling had a heartbreaker earlier that race. He was running great and got taken out by Sean White. But, hey, a lot of races left.
Definitely stuck with it to get a top 20 finish, definitely helping out the points there. As we look on back, Aaron Waddle, another wild man here tonight, finishing 21st. Carl Heiss sticking with it as well, 22nd. Jonathan Dickard, Ivan Pengrazio. We got Jason Brayman, 25th. The Australian V8 Supercar winner, champion there, Shane Van Gisbergen, will finish in 26th. Scott Bolster through 27th. Michael Smith Jr., Brian Wildeisen, and Sam King all the way through 30. And Mitchell, take us home with the final results.
You got the 6 of Sean Hughes coming home 31st, Chris Crowell 32nd, Brandon Kirkman 33rd, Danny Hugel. A lot of these guys here at the end got in that first lap incident. Danny Hugel in 34th, Jordan Hayes, Christopher Munger, and Scott Ikes among the guys in the big one on first lap.
What a night it has been here tonight for the NIS Daytona 500, kicking it off. But we were glad to be able to bring this coverage to you here on the Digital Forge Broadcasting Network. Going to try to cover more of these this season as well. And Mitchell, pleasure having you in the booth here tonight to be really a good analyst and bring the tech specs of it to the viewers out there, and hope everybody out there enjoyed. Whether you got us out there on Twitch, you got us out there on Facebook Live, or even on YouTube, we do thank you for tuning in. you have any final thoughts you'd like to tell the viewers here tonight about this Daytona 500?
Well, when we watched that first lap, big one, you really thought, maybe it was just going to be a calm race, not a lot to talk about. But man, it seemed like every 20 to 30 laps, something else came up. A lot of drama with the little cars. But now that this race is behind everybody, they can focus on the season. Everybody says Daytona is the Super Bowl, and the season starts after this. These next races moving forward will decide who can really stay among everybody else with the setups and the driving ability coming to these intermediate tracks ahead.
Well, Mitchell, excellent job done here tonight, being up here in the booth with me. Do appreciate your time, and looking forward to calling more NIS races ahead.
Thank you.
All right, folks, there you have it. What a night of racing. More to come this season. We do kind of stepped out of our realm with short track racing here tonight. Do appreciate you tuning in. Again, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube, the three mediums that we love to broadcast. An opportunity for anybody out there to be able to tune in and view these wonderful races we put on each and every night. That is going to do it for us here at Daytona. Woo! What a race we had tonight. I'm Dustin Caldwell with Mitchell Reeves here, saying good night, everyone, and we'll see you coming up tomorrow night as the Sim Auto Racing Association and the Button Box Super Shop Series Super Late Models in action.